Chapter 8:10. What's the rush? Let's wait a little longer. Sun Lang said. His face was expressionless, and no one could tell what he was thinking. But Jia Sherdao seemed to realize something. He asked softly, "What's wrong?" Sun Lang retracted his gaze. He was deep in thought, as if there was a problem that was troubling him. He thought for a while, then looked at his younger brother and asked, "Shangdao, you are very smart, and at the age where you are innocent and naive like an idiot. Perhaps you can provide me with another unique way of thinking." Jia Sherdao was used to this way of speaking. He didn't know if it was praise or sarcasm. Sun Lang continued, "So, help me think about how to defeat a heartless person." Jia Sherdao was startled at first, then he thought, since it was, "help me think about it," it would naturally be from his brother's point of view. He thought for a moment and came up with an answer that was very Sun Lang's. "Find him and kill him." Sun Lang laughed and rubbed his brother's head. "That's not easy." He was a little disappointed, no matter how nice it sounded. The truth was that there were many things that were restraining his sword, preventing him from wielding it as freely as he did on the Great Barren Mountain. It was hard to say whether this was good or bad. There were two sides to everything, but this was indeed a problem that couldn't be solved by force alone. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been one of the things that had been bothering him for more than 2 years. Jia Sherdao obviously misunderstood something. "Brother, are you saying that the enemy is hiding in the dark and using tricks, so it's not easy to find him? Before we find him, we have to have a battle of wits with him first?" Sun Lang thought for a while, then nodded. "You're right. A heartless person, does that mean he's cold-blooded and ruthless?" Sun Lang nodded. "Yes," Jia Sherdao said without hesitation. "Since we have to fight against a heartless enemy, we have to fight against ruthlessness with emotions, with the human heart against the heartless, and with humanity against the devil." Sun Lang frowned. "How can you say something so flirtatious? Don't you think it's disgusting? Are you a teenager who hasn't grown up? Was he a hot-blooded protagonist with a low IQ? Is she a magical girl who screams love and justice?" Jia Sherdao looked at Sun Lang with a strange expression. Sun Lang felt a little awkward under his stare. "What are you looking at?" Jia Sherdao said slowly, "Brother, that's what you said before." Sun Lang's body, he shook violently. "That's impossible. She must have said it when she was young. It must have been the real Jia Ying who said that." "No, you said it after you grew up. How would the Jia Ying of the past know anything about magical girls?" "Liar, you're lying. I don't remember raising you to be such a child." Jia Sherdao said helplessly, "You were the one who taught me. In those years, you talked to me about this once, about how to fight against a cold-blooded and ruthless enemy. You said that to fight against a cold-blooded and ruthless person, you could only become more ruthless and cold-blooded than him. That's not a good idea, because humans are different from beasts. Humans have endless feelings. Suppressing feelings and turning yourself into a beast may be able to defeat the enemy, but you'll lose yourself. It's not a real victory." Sun Lang frowned and sneered as if he was denying everything in his past. "Then what? To fight against ruthlessness with emotions, do you want to use love and kindness to reform and forgive the enemy?" Jia Sherdao shook his head seriously and said, "No, brother, you said it yourself. There are so many good people in the world that we don't have time to save and protect. How can we waste so much time on reforming the bad people?" That was interesting. Sun Lang's expression softened a little. He frowned and said, "Then it's a fight? Emotional or ruthless, intentional or unintentional. It's about the way, not the means." Sun Lang's eyes suddenly changed. Jia Sherdao looked at his brother in front of him and sighed with nostalgia. A few years ago, his brother, who was full of light, had given these things to him. Now, he was returning the light that shone on him back then. He said softly, "In other words, since the other party is a monster without a heart, he naturally doesn't understand people's hearts and doesn't believe in human nature. But we should believe in him. So, if we want to defeat him, we have to start from where he doesn't believe and doesn't consider. This is to fight ruthlessness with emotions." Sun Lang was completely stunned. Although he didn't show it on the surface, his heart was surging. The shock in his heart couldn't be described with words. It wasn't because he was surprised by this wonderful idea. It was because he was surprised by what Jia Sherdao said and what he had said back then. It was actually the same as what he had thought now. The language was disgusting, the idea was naive, and the way of thinking was stupid. But it was the same in essence. How to fight against a person without a heart. That was what he was thinking now. Using one's mind against the unintentional. This was really... Sun Lang was silent, and a faint light appeared in his mind. He seemed to have thought of something, and some things were slowly connecting in his mind. He seemed to have a clue, and he seemed to have understood something. But how could things be so easy? How difficult was it to piece back together something that had already been broken? Jia Sherdao said in a low voice, "Brother, you don't have to completely deny yourself back then. If you were a pedantic person with a mind full of benevolence, righteousness, etiquette, and faith, you wouldn't have achieved so much, and everyone wouldn't have respected and trusted you so much. In fact, some things aren't as opposite as you think." Sun Lang was silent for a moment, and then said lightly, "Is that so?" Jia Sherdao's voice was soft and firm. "Yes." Sun Lang looked at his cousin in front of him and asked, "Do you believe those words?" "As long as it's what you say, I believe it." Sun Lang nodded calmly. "Okay, since you said that you can win by scheming against the unintentional, since you think that it's possible to scheme against the heartless, since you think that I was right before, then let's make a bet." "Yes, let's make a bet." It wasn't just a battle of wits. It wasn't just a strategy. "Let's make a bet too." Jia Sherdao nodded and said, "Okay, what's the bet?" Although he said that, his heart couldn't help but be in his mouth. According to his brother's personality, he would definitely make a very shameful or terrifying bet. If he won, he would definitely try his best to force me to fulfill my promise. If I dared to deny it, he would definitely punch me. But if I won, he would definitely deny it, because I can't beat him. This was already an established routine, and it was his brother's usual way of doing things. But why not bet? Even if there was a shameful bet, even if he had to face his elder brother's denial, no matter what, he still had to gamble, because this was something his elder brother had once given him. He had to firmly believe in it. He had to prove it to his current elder brother, and he hoped that his elder brother could face it head on. Therefore, he had to accept this bet. But unexpectedly, his brother didn't propose any excessive wager. He smiled faintly. "There's no need to say the bet. The result of this bet is the bet. If it succeeds, it succeeds. If it doesn't, it doesn't." Jia Sherdao seemed to understand something. He said in a low voice, "Brother." After Sun Lang made up his mind, he seemed to have solved a big problem. The worry between his brows disappeared as he said, "In that case, let's start the next step." Although he wanted to go back and see his father, Jia Sherdao still chose his brother. If Jiasu knew, he would be even angrier. Sun Lang seemed to have seen through his thoughts. "Don't worry. When the matter at hand is settled, you can go back and see your father. He was just injured, and now he's like an old man with an empty nest. He needs your care and care. Father and son can take the opportunity to talk." Jia Sherdao nodded and said, "Okay." Sun Lang looked at him and smiled. "You were scared to death of your father before, like a rabbit seeing a tiger. You even quarreled with him, but now you're worried?" Jia Sherdao said unhappily, "He's my father after all. He's my family, and he's very good to me. Although we have different ideas, it has nothing to do with family." Sun Lang nodded and said, "I guess so too. He probably thinks the same way in his heart." Jia Sherdao nodded slowly and said, "Brother, let's talk about business. I'll take care of my personal matters." "Don't be distracted." Sun Lang smiled and shook his head. He changed the topic. "Jia Yutsun went to work, right?" Jia Sherdao nodded. "He's really scared." He was already shaken and scared between the imperial envoy and the prince. Now that it's become a fight between Empress and King Zhongshuan, he wouldn't dare step in even if he had 10 guts. Of course, he has to hold on to the imperial envoy's leg to avoid being dragged into the turbulence. So, he will do his best to do what I ask him to do. "That's good," Sun Lang said. "Now we have to fan both sides. First, we have to find a way to let Wang Qi and the Shi brothers pass the news back. Most importantly, We have to make King Zhongshuan believe that Empress is plotting against the Shi family and is planning to ruin his plans. We have to let him connect me to that woman. Jia Shidao asked how. That's easy. Now that I've scared Shi Yuan, all I have to do is go to the Shi family and tell them what to do. With King Zhongshuan's stupidity and hostility towards Empress, he'll definitely take the bait. Sun Lang couldn't help but laugh at the thought of that outcome. And Shi Yuan will also know that King Zhongshuan is behind the Wang family, and that we're messing with him because of the fight for the throne. Once the two sides misunderstand each other, the water will be muddied. How interesting. Jia Shidao frowned. Interesting indeed. But what does this have to do with the bet? Sun Lang looked at him with a gentle expression. Silly boy, if we don't muddy the water, how can we plan? Then what do you plan to do, brother? Since it's a bet, for the sake of fairness, we have to keep it a secret. Otherwise, how could one scheme against an unsuspecting person? Otherwise, how could one look an emotionless person? Chapter 811. In King Zhongshuan's secret stronghold, the young prince, who had been called just the right amount of stupidity by his own strategist, had just finished writing a letter to call for reinforcements. He had sent a loyal servant to deliver the letter through a top-secret channel. His brotherly Xuanba, his grandfather's family, and the forces left behind by King Zhongshuan's residents, as well as loyal allies and trustworthy helpers. He called them all. Of course, he had used the royal family's secret communication channel, so there was no risk of the news being leaked. He had to call for more people, he thought. After all, he was a former marshal. Even though Jia Ying was seriously injured, she was still a stubborn person. He was a member of the royal family. He had to maintain the dignity and elegance of the royal family at all times. Even if he despised his opponent, he had to pay enough attention to them. And the more people there were, the better. Because those who came were all my allies and potential staunch allies. They were the best support for me to ascend to the throne. If I could defeat Jia Ying, my name would definitely spread throughout the world. How could such a grand scene lack spectators? With them as spectators, it was extremely good. My heroic achievements would definitely increase their confidence and convince them wholeheartedly. From then on, they would wholeheartedly support me. That was great. The young prince daydreamed for a while, then prepared to get down to business. I will definitely become a monarch with great talent and bold vision. How can I rely only on my subjects to accomplish things? Sir has great foresight and strategy, but I cannot rely on him for everything. This is not the way of a monarch. Although it wasn't advisable to do everything personally, he couldn't just be a clay puppet. So he began to mobilize his troops, ordering the spies hidden all over Jinling to take action. As the saying goes, know thyself and know thy enemy to win 100 battles. First, he had to plan the overall situation. He was very efficient at gathering information. Soon, the young prince received the first report. What? He looked at the old servant who delivered the news and raised his eyebrows. Jia Shidao went to the Shi residence. The old servant still looked like he was half dead, but his tone was clear as he reported the news sent back by the spies. Yes, young Master Jia of the Ningba Mansion has entered the Jia Mansion in plain clothes. Our spies did not dare to approach, but they still saw the head of the Shi family, Shi Yuan, personally coming out to greet him. He was extremely respectful. King Zhongshuan fell into deep thought. That's strange. Why did Jia Shidao go to the Shi family? The old servant didn't reply. He was a protector, not a strategist. This wasn't his mission. The young lord didn't seem to expect him to continue the conversation. Instead, he said to himself, the Jia family and the Shi family have never been on good terms. Jia Ying thought of a way to put Wang Wangxing's body into Wang Ren's coffin, which made the Shi family the scapegoat. That was such a brilliant move that even I have to praise her. Now that the Shi family has nothing to say about it, Jia Shidao should pursue them with all his might. Why did he go to the Shi family in disguise? The old servant remained silent. After thinking for a while, the little prince still couldn't figure it out, so he subconsciously asked, "Where's teacher?" The old servant replied, "Master hasn't returned yet." King Zhongshuan's brows furrowed slightly before relaxing. Forget it. I can't always rely on him. He patiently pondered. Jia Sherdao isn't a real imperial envoy. Why did he go to the Shi family to investigate a case? Shi Ichuan is a vengeful person. Jia Sherdao detained his son, but he still put on a face and greeted him personally. I suspect there's something fishy going on. The old servant, who had been keeping his head down, slowly said, "Your Highness, the Shi family is Empress's people." The young lord nodded. "I know. The Shi family's rise in the past 2 years has been very unusual. I've looked into it before. Their new caravans and businesses in the past 2 years have all been traced back to Tensei province. This Shi Ichuan obviously turned to my good sister." Speaking up to this point, a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. Even the incident at Jinling this time, I suspect that she was behind it. Putting everything else aside, the Shi family dared to rob the coffin in broad daylight. It's obvious who fed them the courage of a bear's heart and leopard's guts. The Shi family. This time, I'll teach them a lesson. But at this point, he seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly raised his head. "You mean?" The old servant lowered his eyes. "I don't understand. I just want to remind your Highness not to ignore the Shi family's background. After all, no matter what, Empress Tensei is your biggest enemy." At this point, it was enough for him to divert his thoughts. Moreover, his opponent was Empress Tensei. The young lord's thoughts ran like a wild dog. "I know that the Shi family is that woman's lackey. Jiang must know too. After all, he's a marshal. The Shi family's rise is strange. He must have noticed something strange. Besides, Jiasu must have noticed it too, so he must have known. Moreover, our previous plan was to hide behind the scenes and mislead Jiaying with layers of fog and stratagems. It was him who mistook the enemy for the heavenly policy mansion and then led him to fight with that woman. It would be best if both sides suffered great losses. Therefore, he must have realized the background of the Shi family. And he hid Wang Wangxing's body in Wang Ren's coffin. He must have wanted to take the opportunity to attack the Shi family." King Zhongshuan rubbed his chin. "But now he sent Jia Sherdao to the Shi family. What is he trying to do? Is he trying to subdue Shi Ichuan? No, that's impossible. Jiaying has always been arrogant. Why would he be interested in the Shi family? Besides, if he really wanted to subdue them, he wouldn't have sent Jia Sherdao. Why didn't he go himself?" The young lord thought hard. He really didn't know why Jia Sherdao was going to the Shi family. At this moment, 3 long knocks and 1 short knock sounded outside. King Zhongshuan broke free from his thoughts and glanced at the old servant. The old servant bowed slightly and walked out. The knocks were a signal, indicating that new information had arrived. The young lord pinched his forehead and relaxed. Without Master by his side, this kind of mental activity made him feel a little annoyed. The feeling of not having a clue was very annoying. After taking a sip of tea and a short rest, the old servant quietly stepped in and bowed. "Your Highness," King Zhongshuan said faintly. "What is it?" "Your Highness, Jia Yutsuan came to us." The young lord raised his eyebrows. "I thought he was scared out of his wits by the fake imperial edict. Didn't Master say that we should just leave him be? Why did he come looking for me?" "No, he just brought a letter." The old servant checked the letter in his hand to make sure it was not tampered with before handing it over. King Zhongshuan opened the letter and glanced at it. Then his expression changed dramatically, and he stood up. It was as if he had just found out that his sister was hanging out with some hooligans and was plotting to steal his father's inheritance. The hand holding the letter trembled slightly, as if the thin piece of paper weighed 1,000 caddies. There were no superfluous words in the letter, the main point being that Jia Yutsuan wanted to break up. In the end, the magistrate was a man of letters who cared about face. First, he humbly thanked the prince for his appreciation, then appropriately expressed his regret. Finally, he explained the reason in a roundabout way. He said that with his small arms and legs, he did not dare to get involved in the turbulence between Tensei province and the prince of Zhongshuan's estate. For the sake of their future meeting, he carefully and unobtrusively said a few unimportant things. For example, after the Shi brothers were imprisoned, they received special treatment in secret. For example, although the imperial envoy was not polite in court, In private, he did his best to avoid the blame of the Shi family, and instead turned the spearhead to the Wang family. There were also many seemingly insignificant details. Every word, every sentence was like a vicious dagger, stabbing directly into the heart. The young lord trembled from head to toe and panted like an ox, his eyes turning red. Moments later, he squeezed out a few words through gritted teeth. Traitor, bastard, pervert, slut. The old servant slightly raised his head, as if in shock, but the young lord had already gone mad with anger. He tore the letter to shreds and stomped his feet, cursing, "I'm doing my best for the country, to get rid of Jia Ying from my imperial father. Who would have thought that woman would betray me and flirt with this traitor? She actually sold me out." The old servant was startled. The prince of Zhongshan seemed to be very angry. He roared, "I was wondering why Jia Ying didn't die in the desolate mountains. It must have been because that slut still had feelings for her and showed mercy. Damn it, damn it. This is treason. She actually dared to betray me. She actually dared to betray me." The old servant wanted to read the contents of the letter, but when he narrowed his eyes to take a closer look, the letter had already been torn to shreds. He couldn't even make out the words, so he asked, "Your Highness, what does the letter say?" The young lord roared, "What else could it be? Tensei Province has long been in cahoots with Jia Ying. I want to report this to my imperial father and have this adulterous couple cut to pieces." The old servant said, "Your Highness, please calm down. This is a serious matter. Jia Yutsu inside of the story isn't enough to trust. It's possible that the enemy is framing her. Your Highness, please don't get angry." Who would have thought that at this time, the young lord's anger would quickly fade? He smiled coldly. How was it? How was my acting?" The old servant was truly shocked now. The prince of Zhongshan Sunran said, "I'm not an idiot. How could I not see through this kind of framing? But since I've seen through it, why point it out? Jia Ying is in cahoots with Tensei Province. Isn't this a great thing?" The old servant's narrowed eyes flashed with a shrewd light. "Your Highness, you're thinking Jia Ying was actually reduced to playing such a pathetic and clumsy trick of sowing discord. Jia Yutsun definitely couldn't handle the pressure and betrayed us. So Jia Ying beat him at his own game, right? We're using sowing discord to deal with him. So he's also using sowing discord to deal with us. He's underestimating me too much." At this point, the young lord's eyes became even more gloomy and cold. "Since you beat him at his own game, then I'll beat him at his own game too. Since you said you're in cahoots with Tensei Province, then act a bit more realistically. I can take advantage of this opportunity to collect the evidence you fabricated. The more realistic your act is, the more I'll like it. If you can create flawless evidence like how you forged an imperial edict, then I'll be even happier." He opened his right hand, then pulled back his fingers one by one and clenched them into a fist. His tone was Sunran as he said, "If you want to beat him at his own game, then I'll kill two birds with one stone. When the time comes, I'll take care of you and gather enough evidence to give that woman a heavy blow. This is also what you want, right? I could take revenge for you while I'm at it. Although it's fake evidence, as long as it's linked to you, then it'll definitely plant a thorn in Imperial Father's heart. As long as Imperial Father has a thorn in his heart, then that woman won't be able to touch the throne. After all, that woman planned to kill Jia Ying in Dahuang Mountain in the past in order to prove herself to Imperial Father. You're heartless and ruthless. Sooner or later, you'll suffer retribution and die in the hands of your lover." At this point, the clever young lord couldn't help but laugh wildly. What a genius, he thought. The old servant seemed to be a bit worried. "Your Highness is wise. But since Jia Ying is using a trick, it's best to be careful. He was famous for his strange tactics in the past. Jia Ying, it's Jia Ying again. Will you guys die if you don't brag about Jia Ying?" Prince Zhongshuan couldn't stand boasting. He sneered, "What do you mean by strange tactics? The art of war has always been about the strong defeating the weak. Only with strength can you win with strange tactics. Tricks without strength are just petty tricks. Now that he's desperate and trying to show off his petty tricks, I'm not afraid at all. Why? Because I'm stronger than him. Now that he's lost his sacred sword and is seriously injured, I don't know how much of his martial arts is left. On the other hand, I have many fierce generals under my command, and powerful reinforcements will arrive soon. Even if he has 1,000 tricks up his sleeve, I'll break them with my own strength and turn them all into a joke. The old servant sighed. Your Highness, we still don't know how strong Jia Ying really is. He doesn't even have his sacred sword. So how strong can he be? The young lord frowned. Why do you guys always raise the morale of others and lower your own? If Jia Ying was still as good as he was back then, why would he try to drive a wedge between us now? He would have tortured Jia Yuxun long ago to force him to tell us how to contact him, and then he would have followed the clues all the way here and killed us all. But now, where is he? The old servant was speechless. Where was Sun Lang? He was now sitting in a carriage with Jia Sherdao, heading slowly in the direction of the Jia mansion. That idiotic little prince will definitely behave himself for a while after receiving this letter, Sun Lang said as he placed a few bullets on a small table in the carriage. As he spoke, he swept a bullet aside. After all, idiots are the hardest to deal with. You don't know how stupid he is, and you can't predict what he'll do, so you have to find something for him to do. After removing the biggest uncertainty, we can then calm down and have a good fight with our real opponents. Jia Sherdao scratched his head. If he's really stupid enough to believe it and excitedly report it to the emperor, what should we do? Sun Lang rolled his eyes. So what? What I have to lose? Whether he reports it or not, whether the emperor believes it or not, what does it have to do with me? I don't think so. Chapter 8:12. Everything was progressing according to plan, but the development of events was sometimes very easy to deviate from the original intention. The plan was constantly being adjusted because the enemy was also constantly changing. As the layers of fog were constantly dispelled, many things would become clear. At least for Sun Lang, this was the case. Dispelling the fog, he went straight to the source. When the Prince of Zhongshuan's estate surfaced, when he realized that the military advisor behind Prince Zhongshuan was the key figure in the matter of Jinling, he made adjustments and changes to his plans accordingly. Some things were no longer so complicated and troublesome, but some things had become even more troublesome. Even more troublesome was the human heart. Sun Lang returned to the Ronghua estate alone. To him, this place was still very unfamiliar. He did not immediately go to find Shui Baochai and Lin Daiyu, but instead strolled around. In any case, with his martial arts, it was all too easy for him to not be discovered. From the outer courtyard to the inner courtyard, from the outer study to the various courtyards of the inner courtyard, a noble and noble aura was hidden in every detail. Jia Ying had grown up here. Jia Ying, the stranger that Sun Lang was most familiar with, had an excellent background. He was the son of a duke, spoiled since childhood, and was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. As he grew older, the male descendants of the family died one after another on the battlefield, leaving him as the only child. Thus, his life was more or less stable. He would be carefully doted on by the entire estate, and even the imperial court and the emperor would not force him onto the battlefield. He could have lived a carefree life, but he still ran away, and then he stirred up many, many troubles. That was the beginning of the story. A visitor from beyond the heavens entered this world. Then, heaven and earth reversed, fate changed, and everything ushered in an unpredictable change. What had originally been an ordinary life on Earth had unexpectedly become a peerless expert and unparalleled commander in this world. In a short span of 6 years, his magnificent military career had left behind a dazzling and dazzling legend in this world. To use one's own struggle to affect the course of history, this was such an amazing thing. That was where everything began. With such a mood, Sun Lang looked at the world of Ronghua Manor again, and actually felt a kind of sigh and sigh. At this time, he just wanted to sigh at the impermanence of the world, at the changeability of fate. Everything began when Jia Ying ran away from home. Jia Ying participated in the Holy Sword plan. He passed many tests and came to the end. He was supposed to pick up the Holy Sword and become the new sword master. Then, Under the guidance of the spirit of the ancestor, he would become the most powerful sword sage and the most brilliant general in the empire. He would leave his name in history and bring glory to his ancestors. He would regain honor for the Jia family and let his grandmother be proud of him and comfort his relatives in the underworld. It should have been like this, but he died. Not only did his dream come to nothing, he even caused another person to come into this world to take over his plate, take his blame, and accept a life that he did not want to accept at all. But this imposter from another world not only was not defeated by the bloody slaughter and spiritual impact, but also gritted his teeth and endured it. Not only that, but he also did what Jia Ying could not do. He made brilliant contributions and left his name in history. He did everything that Jia Ying desired to do. But after all, he was not Jia Ying, so he suffered a despicable betrayal in the last battle. The people who arranged this betrayal were the bastards who had summoned him and forced him to fight for this world. Their sins could not be redeemed by 100 deaths, and this blood feud could not be washed away even with all the water of the 4 seas. But the heavens were clear, and the cycle of cause and effect was clear. Sun Lang in the great desolate mountain was no longer the mortal who had just been summoned 8 years ago. So the shameful betrayal did not succeed. He not only survived, but also gave the enemy a heavy price, heavy enough to make them regret it for a lifetime. Now, he had a key in his hand, a key that could start the chaos of the world. He knew that the empire could no longer create an imperial army, because he was the one who had done it. No one knew Huda's weakness better than him. She succeeded because of the imperial army, but she failed because of the imperial army. With the current reserves of the imperial treasury, perhaps in a few more years, the imperial court would no longer be able to create an imperial army for the new martial scholars. With Hutu's current international reputation and the degree to which the various countries paid attention to the martial selection, the moment the news spread, the ambassadors of the various countries stationed in the imperial capital would probably learn of this matter. This would lead to endless wild thoughts in the other 4 countries and cause unrest in the hearts of the people. And if Sun Lang was willing, he could speed up this process as fast as he wanted. What goes around comes around, and what goes around comes around. 8 years ago, that person who had fearfully sized up this world, that pitiful chess piece who had been wantonly manipulated and crudely interfered with his fate, now had the strength to overturn the world. Back then, who could have thought of this? Whether it was the deceased Jia Ying, the people who had summoned Sun Lang, the emperor, the soldiers of the great desolate mountain, or the deceased Bai Yue, who could have thought of this? All of this had originated from Jia Ying's departure. Just like this, a person changed the fate of a person, and then this person changed the fate of a group of people. They interfered with each other, their fates intertwined, and the world changed as a result. Sun Lang softly sighed. At this moment, he suddenly understood something. 8 years ago, that weak and confused youth who bore a heavy fate that did not belong to him was now standing at the juncture of another destiny. He lightly pressed his hand to his heart. Just who was the enemy this time? Husband. At this moment, a surprised voice sounded. Why are you here? Sun Lang had already sensed the approaching person, but the footsteps were very familiar, so he did not avoid them. He raised his head and saw that it was indeed Sister Bao. He smiled. I was just walking around on a whim. Shui Baochai bit her lip, not knowing what to say for a moment. According to the setting, the two of them were still in a cold war. She was angry that her husband hid everything from her and never told her the truth. Although they were husband and wife, there was always a distance between them. She sensed a certain change in the situation with her sensitive intuition as a girl, and felt a great threat from Zhang, Yin Luo, and the others. She even sensed something that she did not dare to investigate, because she was afraid of losing her husband again. 2 years of unforgettable memories, 2 years of separation. That bone-deep loneliness and coldness was the most torturous poison in the world. She did not want to experience it a second time. As a result, she lost her temper. This was the first time she lost her temper after meeting her husband. However, after losing her temper, although her husband's attitude changed a little, the relationship between the two became even more awkward. Just like now, when she saw her husband standing there in a daze, She actually didn't know what to say. Should I greet him with a smile like before, or continue to show a cold face? Sister Bao was in a dilemma. Sun Lang waved to her and smiled. Come, talk to me. Shui Baochai was surprised at first, and then she saw Sun Lang's expression at this time. She was slightly startled, with a sense of sadness in the seriousness. She had not seen her husband like this for a long time, so she quietly walked to Sun Lang's side and nodded. Okay. Sun Lang smiled. He was silent for a moment, as if he was organizing his words, and then said, You lost your temper before, angry that I hid everything from you. You said that between husband and wife, we should face everything together. This is very reasonable, and I have to apologize to you. But I'm not used to talking. It is not born autistic, but acquired. He leaned his back against a pillar, looked at the blue sky, and said lightly, 2 years ago and 8 years ago, there was a big event that changed my fate. Those should be the 2 times when my heart was the weakest. Those 2 times, I really wanted to find someone to talk to. But the first time, I wanted to find someone to talk to, but the people around me ignored me. I wanted to talk to the broken sword in my hand, but I was always interrupted by the broken sword spirit in the sword. This is very normal. For example, when you are playing a game, leveling up your character, making him stronger, giving him good equipment, you can't wait to give him the best things so that he can kill more efficiently. But when he is injured, when he screams, do you care what he thinks? Lost health? Let me heal you. Easy to die. Let's strengthen your physique. How big of a deal is that? There are even those perverts who like to deliberately hurt the girls when they are playing female characters and listen to their screams. For example, the disgusting sound of a dolphin. It is very perverted. And then there is no and then. And the second time, there was no one alive, not even a stupid sword spirit. I could only sit aside in a daze and sulk. In the end, I didn't even know how to walk. I didn't even know how to speak. I scrambled to leave like a headless fly. After going around in circles for a long time, I finally recovered. Even I was puzzled. After going through so many things, I still looked like a F** king human. He said it very casually, but Shui Baochai was shocked. Sister Bao subconsciously wanted to grab Sun Lang's hand, but he easily avoided her. Sun Lang smiled and said, Hey, don't lose control. It is very difficult to deal with you like that. But don't worry, I will think of a solution. Shui Baochai bit her lips and whispered, But I still want to hug you. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Sun Lang smiled and changed the topic. All right, let's not talk about the past. Although I am not used to talking, there are some things that I have to learn. I was not used to it before because no one was willing to listen. Now that someone is willing to listen, it is a good thing. Coincidentally, a lot of things have happened recently. After thinking about it, I'm a little nervous and want to find someone to talk to. Although Shui Baochai was annoyed at her husband's lack of understanding, since Sun Lang said so, she could only nod and say, Yes, your wife is listening. I will listen to whatever you say. Sun Lang gently exhaled a breath of air. He looked at the direction of the Ningguo residence. The 2 residences were next to each other, and the Ningguo residence was just next door. Then he said softly, Do you want to know where Gu Dao went? He is in the Ningguo residence, guarding his father. Jiasu encountered an assassin and was injured. Shui Baochai nodded and said, I heard. Uncle has strengthened the security and sent someone to remind us that there was an assassin. He asked us to be careful. Oh, you know, Sun Lang said calmly. The assassin who assassinated Jia Su came from the Prince Zhongshuan residence. You probably don't know about this. Shui Baochai said in surprise. The Prince Zhongshuan residence? Why? Sun Lang nodded and said, Yes, I caught the assassin and took him to the Jinling government office. You definitely don't know that after Jia Sherdao and I left, another person from the Prince Zhongshuan residence came to the Ningguo residence. He's a lobbyist and a mastermind behind the overall situation. He arranged the matter of Granny Ma and Granny Wang. The death of Wang Wangxing and the Wang family's visit was probably caused by him. Shui Baochai's expression changed slightly. This was too much information. However, there was more information to come. Sun Lang said softly, And you also don't know that this person went to the Ningguo residence to drive a wedge between Jiasu and me. He has already played 2 tricks before. He hinted and drove a wedge between Jiasu and me twice through Wang Zishan and Wang Qi. He has successfully created a wedge between Jiasu and me. And this time, he came personally. With my understanding of him, I'm afraid that Jiasu was tempted. Sister Bao was shocked. She suddenly realized that Sun Lang just called Jiasu by his name and no longer called him uncle. Shui Baochai said anxiously, the Rong and Ningguo residents are one. How could uncle make such a mistake? There must be some misunderstanding. Has my husband explained it? Sun Lang shook his head and said, there is no misunderstanding. There is no need to explain. He is using an open scheme. He was calm, but Sister Bao could not be calm. Her mind was in a mess, and many thoughts were mixed up. All kinds of thoughts came one after another. She was afraid, but she did not know what she was afraid of. Or rather, she knew, but she did not dare to think about it. She felt uneasy and said softly, then Xiang Dao. Sun Lang shook his head. Xiang Dao does not know. How can we let him know about this? Sister Bao gritted her teeth. I'll tell uncle. She turned around, but Sun Lang was already in front of her. He looked straight in her eyes and said calmly, don't go. You can't go. You can't go. Shui Baochai asked softly, what? Sun Lang lowered his eyes and said softly, because I don't want you to go. Because this is a gamble. Because this is a battle between me and myself. It is a battle between light and darkness. Because this is the 3rd turning point in my life after 8 years and 2 years ago. There is no helplessness and desperation like the first time, and there is no despair and madness like the second time. But the 3rd time is more important than the first 2. Because this time, I will use my own will to see, hear, and think before making a choice. Shui Baochai took 2 steps back and said in a trembling voice, I don't understand. Then I will explain it more clearly. Sun Lang said calmly, 8 years ago, I was forced to lose. 2 years ago, I was forced to gain. This time, I want to see it with my own eyes. Sister Bao shook her head. When it came to it, she found that she was more stubborn than she thought. She was more unwilling to accept the truth, because it meant change, a change that made her uneasy. Shui Baochai felt like she was talking in a dream. She said sadly, I don't understand, then I will understand it more clearly. Sun Lang's eyes were calm. In fact, after he understood the meaning of this battle, there was no need to hide it. He said, I am not Jiaying. I am Sun Lang. Chapter 8:13. Although she had a hunch and was prepared, Shui Baochai still couldn't accept the truth being directly revealed by the person involved. But if this was the case, a lot of doubts could be explained. When they first met a few years ago, he was reserved and alienated. He was the legitimate son of the Ronghua family and received the most elite education from the aristocratic families in Jiangnan, but he wasn't elegant. He wasn't interested in the classics of the predecessors, didn't like to draw, was a terrible chess player, and didn't know how to play the zither. Of course, he was able to use the zither strings to make invisible sound blades. If he was just an ordinary playboy, it would be fine. But he wasn't elegant. Occasionally, he would recite a few lines of poetry, and it would be amazing. Although he wasn't good at music, the tune he occasionally hummed was very pleasant to the ears. Although it didn't conform to etiquette, it was really pleasant to the ears. And he wasn't interested in the classics of the predecessors. He was even dumbfounded when he asked, but when he talked about astronomy, geography, medicine, divination, and other miscellaneous subjects, he was very clear and logical. At that time, he often quarreled and even fought with the officials of the Imperial Astronomer and the Observatory Tower. Whether it was quarreling or fighting, it was one-sided. At that time, people often heard such words, such as, bullshit, that's the movement of plates, idiot. Why do you care about the rotation of the planet? F***ck your mother. A supernova explosion hundreds of thousands of light years away has nothing to do with the advantages and disadvantages of your country's governance, and so on. It was very strange and subtle. She didn't understand, but she felt that what he said was very reasonable. So it was very strange. She didn't know where he learned these miscellaneous knowledge. He was unwilling to go home, with all kinds of excuses. He even said, "I won't return until I destroy the sky demon." Every time they talked about the Ronwa family, he would change the topic without leaving a trace. After the Barren Mountain, they didn't hear from each other for 2 years, and he always refused to go home. Even after they met again, his behavior was very strange, and the subtle expressions of Zhang, Yin Luo, and the others. There were many doubts about the incident in Mingzhou. Today, when they returned to Jinling, her husband's behavior was also very strange. There was a sigh on his face, but there was no trace of reminiscence. It was as if the Ronwa family was a completely strange place for him. There were so many doubts. There was only one answer that could perfectly answer. It was now, it was here, it was what he was saying now. Shui Baochai didn't know what to say. She had a lot of questions in her heart, but she didn't know where to start. She had a lot of things to say, but she didn't know where to start. Sun Lang looked at her quietly. His eyes were calm, and his expression was peaceful. He said softly, "Don't rush. Take your time. Think about it slowly. Accept it slowly. I'm right here. Whatever you want to ask, I'll answer." Shui Baochai bit her lips and glared at Sun Lang. She whispered, "Why are you telling me this?" Sun Lang shrugged helplessly. "You're really something. At first, you even blamed me for hiding everything from you." Shui Baochai glared at him again and said with red eyes, "I regret it. Can't I regret it? You won't allow me to act shamelessly? I suddenly don't want to know anymore." Sun Lang laughed. For some reason, the usually sensible and intelligent big sister, Bao, acting shamelessly did not seem out of place at all. On the contrary, she seemed rather cute. And after her little temper and shamelessness, the slightly awkward atmosphere after the truth was revealed eased quite a bit. He let a long sigh. The feeling of confiding was actually not bad. Sun Lang continued, "Seriously speaking, it's not just about being honest with you. There are many reasons." Shui Baochai interrupted him. The girl looked seriously into his eyes and said, "You know which one I want to hear." Sun Lang was at first surprised, and then he spread out his hands and nodded. "Fine, fine. The most important reason is that I felt the arrival of the Destiny Node. The feeling of choosing the direction of one's life is both exciting and terrifying. I entrusted the future to the hearts of the people, to the things that you all still believe in, to the things that I used to believe in, but now do not believe in, so I feel somewhat at a loss, helpless and lonely. So I hope that someone can share my loneliness, listen to my story, and be a witness. Prove that I once did such a thing, and then pray with me. Hope that everything can return to the best of the past. Hope that tomorrow will be better." He looked at Big Sister Bao and said seriously, "Perhaps knowing the truth is not a good thing. Perhaps being kept in the dark is the greatest happiness. But now that I've told you, you have to worry and fear with me. Fear and anticipation for the unknown tomorrow. No matter what the result is, I will have one less thing on my mind. No matter what I become, you have to always be by my side. Are you satisfied?" Shui Baochai sighed. This was not just a little bit different from her ideal words of love, but it was indeed words that the person she was familiar with could say. And, compared to before, it was just a little bit better. Although this was what she thought, she still curled her lips and said, "But you are clearly Sun Lang." Sun Lang laughed. "But I was the one who greeted you outside the Tsang Mountain camp. I was the one who made the sand table with you. I was the one who led you into battle formations. I was the one who taught you how to line up troops. I was the one who told you about Parthian tactics. I was the one who gave you nicknames. I was the one who made you cry. I was the one who sang to you. All those acquaintances, all those memories, I'm just changing back into my original identity. Do you still dare to deny it?" This was once again a performance that exceeded his usual standards. Sister Bao was somewhat satisfied. She finally smiled and tilted her head, showing the slyness and playfulness of a normal girl that she had always hidden in her heart and did not show. 2 red clouds flew up on her face. She gently kicked away a small stone at her feet. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly said, "Husband." She was originally used to calling him that, but now that she said it again, it had a new meaning. Sun Lang also smiled. For a moment, he had the impulse to hug the person in front of him. But in the end, he had a strong mind and strong control of his Qilin arm. He finally stopped the hand that wanted to open the floodgate. Shui Baochai seemed to have felt Sun Lang's action. She looked at her husband's awkward and helpless expression and helplessly smiled. Then, she stretched out her white and slender hand. Sun Lang was puzzled. Huh? Big Sister Bao crisply said, "Pinky promise." This usually mature, generous, elegant, and rational girl, when she threw a tantrum, was really childish to the limit. Sun Lang was stunned for a moment and helplessly said, "Oh, if it was just a little finger, there shouldn't be too much of a problem, right?" He hesitantly stretched out his hand and was still not at ease. He repeatedly reminded her, "Remember to circulate your qi and urge the Imperial Army. Don't treat it lightly, huh? Let me tell you, I've seen too many people like you who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. But there are people who don't believe in heresy." Shui Baochai said with a smile that was not a smile, "How many people don't believe in heresy?" Sun Lang used his empty left hand to cover half of his face and coldly said, "Don't tell me you can remember how many steamed buns you've eaten so far." Big Sister Bao snorted and then hooked her little finger. It was just the skin on their little fingers touching. But the two of them trembled at the same time. Sun Lang was purely shocked, but Big Sister Bao had already been affected by the power of the Holy Sword. At this moment, an unnatural blush appeared on her cheeks. Sun Lang carefully said, "Are you okay?" Shui Baochai did not answer him. The girl looked at the hooked fingers of the two people. The panic and surprise in her eyes slowly disappeared. Instead, a sacred feeling of ritual arose. Hooking, it was also a kind of promise. She said softly, "Then let's make a promise. Although I don't know what the bet is, and I don't know what the so-called choice is, but as I said, we are husband and wife. I only want to bear the burden with you, and not always be protected by you. And today, I want you to know that you can do whatever you want. I will make a promise with you. No matter what the answer you get is, no matter what the choice you make is, no matter who you are, no matter what your name is, you're my husband. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. You don't have to feel lost or afraid, because no matter what, I will be by your side. And correspondingly, I also want you to make a promise with me." She looked at the person in front of her seriously and slowly said, "I want you to promise me that no matter what, you will not punish yourself with other people's mistakes. No matter what, you will live happily every day from now on. Don't wrong yourself, and don't indulge yourself. The Great War of Tianyuan is long over, but I feel that your war is not over yet. I hope it will end soon." Sun Lang was silent for a long time. Then he slowly said, "I will try my best." Sister Bao smiled. "Good. This is enough." The two looked at each other and smiled. They maintained the hooking gesture. Only two little fingers were intertwined, but between each other, there was a gentle and quiet feeling in their hearts. It was as if at this moment, the two had already hugged each other. Perhaps they both enjoyed the current feeling very much. "Wait a minute." Sun Lang blinked and looked at Sister Bao, whose face was rosy and shiny. He carefully said, "Is there really no problem? Don't you feel uncomfortable?" Shui Baochai blushed and whispered. A poet in the Western continent said that the power of love is great, and this can be overcome with willpower. What kind of person was Sun Lang? At a glance, he could see that the other party did not mean what she said. He had just made pure love, and the pure love energy had been consumed too much. Beep. Energy began to occupy his thinking circuit, so he laughed strangely and said, "Is that so? Then how about this move?" Just as he was about to activate the power of big body protection, Sister Bao exclaimed and quickly let go of her hand and jumped away. She glared at Sun Lang fiercely. "Really? I'm leaving." "Ah!" Sun Lang shouted from behind. "You're leaving just like that? What the hell is going on? I still have a lot to say, and you also have a lot to ask, right? Don't you want to know where I come from? Don't you want to know where I know so many dirty stories? Don't you want to know what kind of wonderful arrangement I have made?" Sister Bao turned back and smiled. "Is this very important?" "Yes, is it very important?" As long as the person in front of her was the person in her memory, what else did it matter? It was not important at all, because from the beginning to the end, She had trusted her husband and believed that he could take care of everything. What she wanted was just knowing companionship. Sun Lang understood this point, and then he was moved. But even if it's not important, why are you running so fast? We have just been honest with each other, and we should develop our relationship. Now is a good time to talk to each other. Let's find a place to sit side by side, and I'll tell you the story of Earth. Isn't that wonderful? Masaka. Sun Lang looked at Sister Bao's, slightly hurried back, and a light flashed in his mind. Like Detective Conan, he suddenly raised his head. There was only one truth. He shouted, "Are you going back to take a shower and change your clothes?" Shui Baochai's back suddenly froze in place. A moment later, a huge stone fiercely smashed over. "Lecher!" Sun Lang raised his hand and lightly tapped the stone, causing it to shatter into fine powder. He smiled and took a deep breath, feeling relaxed and happy. Being honest with each other made him feel much more relaxed, and the slightly fragrant and mysterious aura in the air made him feel as if he had done something perverted. Of course, he also understood Sister Bao's meaning. She meant that a bowl of water should be equal. Since he had told Shui Baochai about this matter, he could not tell Lin Daiyu, and since Shui Kai told him first, Dong Yu should be more. It's probably a similar consideration. Sun Lang thought to himself. Of course, he still felt that Sister Bao was actually busy going back to take a shower and change her clothes. In short, that's it. I made it clear enough. I said, you should say something. Squeak. This was probably Lin Daiyu's reaction after hearing about this matter. Sun Lang's expression was very subtle. Aren't you surprised? Your reaction is a bit embarrassing for me. I'm a transmigrator, and I might be the first visitor from Earth on this planet in thousands of years. I'm different from those flirtatious sky demon. Aren't you shocked? Lin Daiyu frowned, looked at Sun Lang, and asked abruptly, when we first met, what was the first thing you said to me? That was a bit long ago. Let me think. Oh, at that time, we were staring at each other, and neither of us said anything. The atmosphere was awkward, and I raised my hand to greet you and said hi to you, and then you ignored me. Lin Daiyu nodded, and then asked Sun Lang about the military and martial arts, and Sun Lang answered fluently. Finally, Sister Lin looked at Sun Lang and said crisply, "Virgin." Sun Lang said angrily, "What did you say?" Looks like it's the real person. Lin Daiyu concluded, "As long as it's my brother." Sun Lang still felt very subtle. Aren't you shocked? Because there was such a ridiculous speculation in the past, and my brother's reaction was really strange. As for the shock, Lin Daiyu glanced at Sun Lang. Shui Baochai and I have been widows for you for 2 years, and then we suddenly found out that you were still alive, and you could even accept that kind of thing. This is actually nothing. Sun Lang's expression became more subtle. I tried so hard to hide it for a long time, so that you wouldn't be shocked after knowing the truth. Why are you so calm? Lin Daiyu smiled. My brother is so good to me. Do you want a hug? Forget it. In Lin Daiyu's room, Sun Lang sat at the table, and Sister Lin came over with a smile and poured a cup of tea for Sun Lang. But in another world, there is someone who looks exactly like Jiaing. Is there anyone who looks exactly like me in your world? Sun Lang shook his head and said, I don't know, but I'm almost the same as Jiaing, and the star embedding method didn't gather Jiaing's soul, but summoned me, which means that there may be some kind of magical connection between me and him, or maybe all of this is just a coincidence. He sighed, who knows, these are not important. What's important is that Jiaing is dead, and I am Sun Lang. I am here. Sister Lin held her chin with her hand and was silent for a moment and said softly, but the problem is Shui Baochai, and I can accept it easily. But grandmother, brother, do you have any plans? When she mentioned this, Sun Lang's expression changed, and he asked, by the way, I forgot to ask Sister Baochai, have you seen grandmother? Speaking of this, Sister Lin's little face showed a rare look of worry. No, I don't know how to tell her about Wang Shifeng. Shui Baochai meant to keep it a secret for the time being and tell her slowly, little by little. After all, grandmother is old, Sun Lang nodded. I will deal with these things as soon as possible, don't worry. Sister Lin smiled back at him. Of course I don't worry. Looking at Lin Daiyu's smiling face and thinking about the old madam, Sun Lang suddenly felt uneasy, as if he had neglected something. This feeling flashed by. He frowned, and just as he was about to think carefully, there was a sound of hurried footsteps outside, coming from afar. After Lin Daiyu heard it, she immediately got up. "Brother, can you hide first?" Sun Lang shook his head. "No, it's Sister Bao Chai alone." And judging from the sound of the footsteps, her walking posture was very natural. There was a knock on the door, and Lin Daiyu went to open it. It was indeed Shui Bao Chai. Sun Lang looked over and saw that Sister Bao Chai had changed her clothes, but judging from the skin on her face, she didn't take a bath, and probably just wiped her body. What happened? After Shui Bao Chai came in and saw Sun Lang, her face was slightly red, and then she said concisely, "Something happened again." Sun Lang raised his eyebrows. "What?" "Mrs. Xing is dead." "Who is that?" Chapter 814. Who is that? When Sun Lang asked this question, he reacted on his own. Information about this Madame Xing appeared in his mind. She was the first madam of the Ronghua household. She was Jia Ying's aunt and the Dowager Duchess's eldest daughter-in-law. She was not the first wife. After the first wife died, Jia Ying's eldest uncle remarried. She was from a small family and did not have much ability. Her position in the Ronghua household was very awkward because the Dowager Duchess had surpassed her and given the power to make decisions to the women of the third generation, led by Wang Shifeng and Shui Bao Chai. It was like the Queen of England, who had entered the finals, suddenly announcing that she intended to pass the throne directly to her grandson, William, and not Charles, who had been the crown prince for more than 60 years. It was infuriating to think that there was a 60-year-old crown prince in the world. Furthermore, in the end, he did not want to play anymore. However, this was not the most important point. The most important point was that Wang Mama, the one who claimed that she had a part to play in Jia Ying's running away, was Madame Xing's servant. At that time, Wang Mama was not tactful. When she begged for mercy, every word she said poked at Sun Lang's sore spot. Then, of course, she was torn to pieces by the angry Sun Lang. Originally, with Sun Lang's personality, he was bound to investigate this matter to the end. Although Wang Mama was dead, Madame Xing might know something. He did not mind dragging the first madam of the Ronghua household out to do something. After all, this concerned the origin of his transmigration. It was enough for him to ignore it. However, Sun Lang, who was in a rage, was forced to calm down by Shui Bao Chai's shout. At least, he did not expand the scope of his attack. After that, many things happened one after another. There were too many things for the eye to take in. The imperial envoy, the Wang family, Jia Su, the chain of plots, the Prince Zhongshan household, and the person behind the Prince Zhongshan household. The enemy behind the scenes gradually surfaced. Madame Xing was not important. But now she was dead? When Sun Lang heard this news, the first thing that came to his mind was astonishment. How dare she kill someone in the Ronghua household? Although it seems to be an unimportant person, Shui Bao Chai asked, "Who are you talking about?" Sun Lang replied, "Enemy. A real enemy. This doesn't seem like something it would do." Lin Daiyu didn't understand the riddle. Before Sun Lang could tell her about the recent arrangements, Lin Daiyu stood up and said, "We'll know who killed him when we go and see." Sun Lang seemed to be lost in thought. He nodded and said, "That makes sense. Go take a look. Be careful. I'll protect you in secret." Although Lin and Shui were both daughters of rich families, they had been trained in the army. Since it was an important matter, they were naturally in a hurry. They immediately went out, and Sun Lang followed them secretly. Lin Daiyu and Bao Chai rushed all the way to Madame Wang's courtyard. Along the way, they met many maids and servants. They were all shocked and avoided them. Obviously, they already knew something. After all, this was not like the time in the East Garden. There were fewer people in the East Garden, so it took a while for Wang Zixing's body to be seen by a maid who came out to relax. After she screamed and fainted, it attracted other people's attention. Madame Wang's courtyard was in the back of the house, which was the residential area of the Ronghua household. There were people living in the front, back, left, and right of the courtyard. There were also many maids and servants serving in the courtyard. Basically, everyone could hear her if she shouted. When Sun Lang saw this, he had a bad feeling in his heart. He moved, paying attention to the changes in the atmosphere around him, and quietly rushed to Madame Wang's courtyard. When he got close, he heard faint crying and sobbing. After Shui Baochai heard the news, she went to find Lin Daiyu first, so the two of them arrived later. Tanchun was the first to arrive. At this time, she had already sent people to seal off the courtyard to prevent people from entering and leaving. Now, third young lady was questioning the witnesses, but her face was full of fatigue and helplessness. She could understand her feelings. After all, one wave came after another. This time, someone from her own household died, and the person who died was Madame Xing, an elder of high status. It was one disaster after another. Lin Daiyu and Shui Baochai hurried in. Tanchun greeted her sister-in-law with a sad look on her face. Even though Madame Xing was usually not very likable, she was still an elder. She was the widow of eldest uncle. Now, she was gone just like that. Her life was taken in broad daylight. Shui Baochai went forward to hold her hand and comforted her. Lin Daiyu was not so understanding. She looked at the maids in the courtyard and asked, "Who found the body?" One of them said with fear, "Young mistress, it's me, Wen." About the time to drink a cup of tea, Lin Daiyu asked a few more questions. Unfortunately, the maid's education level was low, and she was scared out of her wits. It was very difficult to listen to her. The more Sister Lin asked, the more impatient she became. Finally, she waved her hand, pushed open the door, and stepped in. There was nothing strange in the main hall. When she turned into the bedroom, Sun Lang was already standing inside. Lin Daiyu walked over quietly and stood side by side with Sun Lang. Then, she saw a person lying on the bed. Madame Xing, according to seniority, was Lin Daiyu's aunt. At this time, her eyes were wide open, and her mouth was slightly open. She had a painful expression and a look of disbelief. She was lying on the bed with her face facing the sky. There was a short arrow in her chest. Blood had soaked the bedding under her body, and there was even black blood that had coagulated on the ground. Sun Lang closed her eyes and said, "There are no traces of fighting around here." Looking at her, she either died from a very sudden sneak attack or died at the hands of someone very familiar. Lin Daiyu whispered, "This weapon, is it a sleeve arrow?" "Yes, it is very cunning. The murderer is trying to hide the traces of the attack. The other party seems to know that I can determine the murderer's gender, body shape, and martial arts strength from the traces. Therefore, they deliberately reduced the number of variables in this murder." Sun Lang pointed at the bedding under Madame Wang. "However, no trace is the biggest clue, and no clue is the biggest clue. First, although the sleeve arrow is useful and uses mechanical power to kill, it will not leave any evidence of martial arts. However, the topic is back to the competition of mechanical power in the past few decades. Mechanical power, guns, and artillery. Why can these things that rely on external forces be unable to defeat real martial artists? It is very simple. Although it is easy to rely on external forces, they are rigid and can only bully ordinary martial artists at most." He pointed at his own chest. "Madame Xing has practiced martial arts before. Even though it's not very good, she still has some skills. Even if she was caught off guard by an arrow shot from a sleeve, her body would have automatically evaded the arrow the moment she was hit. This is the instinct of a martial artist. However, she didn't. Although the location of the arrow was in the heart, which is enough to instantly kill an ordinary person, a martial artist's vitality is vigorous and their body is strong. Even if they suffered such a fatal injury, they would at least have the strength to struggle for a while. Therefore, under normal circumstances, her death should have been very miserable and unsightly. Before she died, she must have experienced a lot of pain. This is obvious from her eyes and expression. However, the bedding under her body was very neat, not messy at all, and there were no traces of blood on the ground. Most importantly, her clothes were also very neat, without a single wrinkle or mess. In other words, no matter where she died, although she felt pain before she died, she did not struggle. Lin Daiyu said, Was it anesthetic or acupuncture? Sun Lang reached out and made a cut on Madame Xing's arm. He picked up a bit of blood with his fingernail and put it in front of his nose to smell it. It doesn't seem like anesthetic. Then it was probably acupuncture. He waved his hand and said, "Take off her clothes. You know where I want to look." Lin Daiyu looked at him and seemed a little surprised. "Brother, you have become a gentleman? What are you talking about?" "I have always been a gentleman," Sun Lang said indifferently. "Except for bitches, I respect all women, regardless of whether they are dead or alive." It was indeed so. After the awakening of the great protection power, Sun Lang tried his best to keep a distance from all women instead of giving up on himself and fooling around with them. Even when he wanted to experiment on how to suppress the great protection power, he only searched the streets of the Fog City in the country of acute gold for those women who did not look too decent. After sending them to heaven, he left them a lot of money and even persuaded them to turn over a new leaf. Even though he was so humane, he still got the nickname of the Ripper. The world was really stupid and ridiculous. Lin Daiyu thought about it and was actually speechless. She went forward and unbuttoned a few buttons on Madame Xing's collar and pulled her clothes up to her shoulders, revealing her fair skin. She then pulled up her sleeves and lifted her top to her navel. Then she said, "Done." Sun Lang went forward and reached out his hand to touch a few acupuncture points on Madame Xing's body. Then his expression changed slightly, and he snorted coldly. "Interesting." Sister Lin asked, "What's wrong?" "These acupuncture points have been specially frozen with ice cubes." Sun Lang withdrew his hand. He is really unscrupulous and has considered everything. Lin Daiyu also felt that it was tricky. This is a bit troublesome. It is indeed a bit troublesome. Although no clue is the biggest clue, the murderer has considered everything. This means that he knows me very well. Sun Lang murmured, "But I always like to think one step further. Since he knew that I would pay attention to these details, why didn't he beat me in my own game and just fill in the loopholes? Is this a demonstration to me or some kind of cover-up?" Lin Daiyu was confused. "What?" Sun Lang was just about to explain when his expression changed. He said in a low voice, "The real trouble is coming." While Lin Daiyu was still scratching her head, she heard an angry voice coming from outside. "What? Even I can't enter this place?" Sister Lin's expression also changed. This was because, theoretically, the person outside could freely enter and exit any place in Rongwa Mansion. This was because she was the person with the highest authority in Rongwa Mansion, the head of the entire Jia family, the only surviving ancestor of that generation, and the common elder of both Rong and Ning mansions. Matriarch Sure. Chapter 815. Matriarch Sure. Jia Ying and Jia Tanchuan's grandmother, Lin Daiyu's grandmother, the head of the Rong and Ning families. Even in Jinling, she could be said to be of great age and virtue. Her seniority and prestige were very high, and she was respected by everyone. For the Rongwa family, she was the sky for many people. Although she was old, she was the stabilizing force of the family. When 3 generations of men from the Rongwa family died on the battlefield, the huge Rongwa family could only be led by a woman. This was often a sign of decline for any aristocratic family. But the matriarch took on everything. From the death of 3 generations of men many years ago, to Jia Ying leaving 11 years ago, to the barren mountain 2 years ago, when people's hearts were in turmoil, it was always this respectable old woman who took on everything. Therefore, her status and prestige in the Rongwa family was needless to say. But she was really old. One after another, unforeseen events kept hitting this old woman. Her husband died on the battlefield, her son died on the battlefield, and her grandson died on the battlefield. For more than a decade, similar events had occurred 3 times. She turned the tide every time and controlled the situation every time. But everyone realized that the matriarch was still constantly aging. No one knew how long she could hold on, just like no one knew how many holes were in the heart under that kind face. No one dared to explore, no one dared to try. Moreover, the matriarch was still sick in bed recently. Therefore, even though many things had happened, such as Wang Shifeng's disappearance, Wang Zixing's death in the East Garden, the Wang family's visit, And now, Madame Xing's death. No one had thought of using this matter to disturb the old madam. If the old madam was frightened and something happened to her, no one could bear the responsibility. But now she was here. In the room, Lin Daiyu and Sun Lang looked at each other. Sun Lang could see the panic and worry in Sister Lin's eyes. This time was different from Wang Zixing's. Wang Zixing died in the East Garden. There were not many people, so the news could be blocked and the matter could be hidden. But this time was different. The murder happened in the backyard, so the news spread very quickly. Lin Daiyu whispered, "What should we do?" Before Sun Lang could answer, old madam shouted angrily again, "Get out of the way!" Thump, thump, thump. It was the sound of a body falling to the ground. Although the old lady was old, her martial arts skills were still there. In just a moment, she had already forced her way into the courtyard. Then, Madame Dowager's surprised voice was heard. "Baochai, why are you here?" Shue Baochai first greeted her, and then said helplessly, "Grandma, it's a long story. I heard that you were sick, so I rushed back in the middle of the night. I encountered many things, so I didn't have the chance to greet you," the old lady said. "What is it? Also, what happened to your aunt?" Shue Baochai sighed and said, "Grandma." The answer was already very obvious. Old madam left Shue Baochai and rushed into the room in 2 steps. Hearing the footsteps approaching, Lin Daiyu panicked. Turning her head to look, Sun Lang had already disappeared without a trace. She curled her lips and said something in a low voice. When she looked up, old madam had already stepped in. Seeing her beloved granddaughter and granddaughter-in-law, old Madame Dowager's expression softened. She wanted to say something, but when the words reached her mouth, they were immediately blocked, because she saw the body on the bed. It was her daughter-in-law. Old Madame Dowager's body swayed. Lin Daiyu rushed up and supported her grandmother. She whispered, "You'd better go back and rest. It's enough to have us here. Grandma, you can't be too sad." Old Madame Dowager took a deep breath. Her eyes were a little wet, but she still didn't cry. She stared blankly at the body on the bed and slowly approached. She whispered, "I don't like this daughter-in-law very much. Not to mention that she's a second wife. She's from a small family. She's greedy and doesn't do things well. Not only do I look down on her, but I'm afraid that you, the younger generation, and even the servants in the mansion won't like her, but she's my daughter-in-law after all. When I see her, I think of my son, Dalong and Erlang. I think of them going out fully dressed and coming back in coffin. I don't have a son, and now I don't even have a daughter-in-law. What's going on? How did she die?" Shue Baochai and the others hurriedly followed in. They surrounded old Madame Dowager and blocked Madame Xing's body. Shue Baochai advised, "Grandma, you're not in good health. Go back first. We'll go and report this to the officials. We must investigate this matter clearly and avenge Aunt." Old Madame Dowager didn't seem to hear her words. She looked blankly at the people around her. Lin Daiyu's, Shue Baochai's, Jia Tanchuan's, and one person was missing. Madame Xing was the daughter-in-law she didn't like, but she was very satisfied with Madame Xing's daughter-in-law. She even entrusted the family's heavy responsibility to her and regarded her as her most capable assistant. She asked, "Where's Feng? Where's Feng? Her mother-in-law is gone. Why isn't she here?" Everyone's expression changed at the same time, and they secretly complained in their hearts. Wang Shifeng had long disappeared without a trace. She was suspected of killing her brother. Many people were looking for her, and even the whole Jinling was abuzz with the news. This was the first thing that everyone hid. Shue Baochai bit her lips and decided to muddle through first. She whispered, "Sister Feng went to report this to the officials." "No." Old Madame Dowager said loudly, "How can she go to the officials personally? I've long felt that something was wrong. Today, I even asked Yuan Yang why Feng didn't come and visit me. She usually comes here several times a day. Where did she go?" Just as Jia Tanchun wanted to speak, she was fiercely glared at by the old madam. The old madam then turned to Lin Daiyu. "Pinner, you say it. You usually don't lie. Tell me, where did your sister Feng go?" At this moment, Jia Tanchun suddenly knelt down and said, "Grandmother, don't make things difficult for my 2 sisters-in-law. They just came back and don't know the cause and effect of many things. Granddaughter should say it. Old Madam Dowager took a deep breath and slowly said, "Say it." Tanshun lowered her head and gritted her teeth. "Grandmother, please report that Sister Feng has gone missing. The Wang family suspects that Sister Feng killed her brother, Wang Ren. Sister Feng went missing at the same time, so it's not clear." These words were very skillful. She avoided the important points and dwelled on the trivial. She only talked about Wang Shifeng's situation and hinted that she was persecuted and wronged. She didn't mention Wang Shifeng's suspicion of spreading the news of the old madam's illness all over the city. With such quick wit, Tanshun could be considered very amazing. When old Madam Dowager heard this, she asked anxiously, "Then have you sent people to look for her?" "Yes, we have mobilized all the forces that can be mobilized. The Wang family is also looking for her, but there are no clues." Jia Tanshun said in a low voice, "Grandmother, don't worry. Since my two sisters-in-law have come back, they will help to settle everything." Old Madam Dowager's expression eased slightly inside. Did the Wang family send people to make trouble? Shui Baochai nodded and said, "Yes, granddaughter-in-law blocked them." The old woman was silent for a moment and then said, "Not good, not good. You child, soft on the outside but hard on the inside. You must have offended someone. They said that Feng girl killed her brother. Do they have any evidence?" Jia Tanshun said softly, "There are some, then that's it. The Wang family cares about their face. If they don't have any evidence, how would they dare to come and make trouble?" "Wait." Old Madam Dowager frowned. "Wang Run. I remember that Wang Run is just a useless playboy. His sister killing his brother is a scandal between the two families. The Wang family cares about their face so much, why would they come and make a big fuss to the extent that they need you, Baochai, to block them?" The older the ginger, the spicier it was. The girls' expressions changed again. Old Madam Dowager had watched these girls grow up. Their cleverness was still not enough to look at in front of her. She only needed a moment of change in their expressions to detect the strangeness of the matter. Her voice became colder. "What's going on? What are you hiding? Why, you think that your wings have hardened and you think that I'm old, that I'm about to die, that I'm already muddle-headed and useless, so you're raising me as an old and muddle-headed person." These words were too harsh, and they all lowered their heads. The anger in old Madam Dowager's words became more and more intense. "Are you going to say it or not? If you're not going to say it, I'll go out and find someone to ask. If you insist on hiding it, just kill me with one palm." Tanshun hurriedly hugged old Madam Dowager's legs. Her voice already had a sobbing tone as she said, "It's not that granddaughter doesn't want to speak frankly, but this matter is too troublesome and I don't dare to disturb Grandma." "Grandma, the Wang family indeed didn't come for Wang Ren's death. It's because the acting head of the Wang family, Wang Zixing, mysteriously died in our family's east garden." Old Madam Dowager's body swayed again and leaned back. Shui Baochai hurriedly supported her. Old Madam Dowager's eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. She looked at the few girls in front of her, and her lips trembled as if she wanted to say something. However, with a wah sound, she spat out a large mouthful of blood. This unforeseen event happened very quickly. When old Madam Dowager spat out blood, time seemed to have stopped for a moment. Then the sky fell and the earth cracked. Jia Tanchuan's cries made Shui Baochai's face turn pale. Someone rushed in from outside, but Lin Daiyu rushed out. Old Madam Dowager's personal maid, Yuan Yang, took out a medicinal pill from her bosom. Younger sister Lin shouted outside to call for a doctor. Meanwhile, Shui Baochai hugged old Madam Dowager and slowly sat down on the ground. Sun Lang, who was secretly watching all of this, almost couldn't control his emotions. He felt his blood boil for a long time. At that moment, he had the urge to rush out. However, he couldn't. The elderly must avoid great joy and great sorrow, especially in this kind of situation. Old Madam Dowager had spat out blood because of great sorrow. Then, when she saw her grandson coming back, if she were to be overjoyed, her entire life would probably be gone. There was another point. It was useless for him to come out. He couldn't hold her hand, check on her injuries, or help her heal. Therefore, Sun Lang could only watch all of this quietly. He couldn't do anything. He was powerless. This kind of feeling hadn't appeared for a long time. However, he still calmed down and softly transmitted his voice. Don't panic. She's fine. Press on her Yujin acupoint and use the method I taught you to raise your vital qi. The house was in a mess. Everyone was busy, as if the sky had collapsed. However, even Sun Lang didn't notice that old Madame Dowager, who was being treated, had fallen into Shui Baochai's arms. She opened her eyes slightly and looked at everything around her. She didn't pay attention to Jia Tanchuan's call, nor did she cooperate with Shui Baochai's inner breath. She didn't eat the medicine Yuan Yang handed over. She only looked around. Her slightly opened eyes revealed an indescribable expectation. It was as if she was waiting for someone to appear. It was as if she was waiting with her entire soul. However, what she was waiting for didn't happen. Therefore, her eyes gradually turned cold. From expectation to disappointment, from disappointment to pain, from pain to hatred, from hatred to killing intent. Chapter 8:16. The old lady vomited blood and fainted out of anger. For the Rongwa mansion, it was a big deal. The girl stayed by the bed, and all the famous doctors in the city were invited. The sky gradually darkened, and lights were lit in the manor. People came and went in silence. Doctors with medicine boxes and medicine boys came and left. Everyone, whether it was the doctors or the people in the manor, had grave expressions on their faces. In the night, Sun Lang stood on the wall. He hid in the darkness and watched everything silently. He saw Shui Baochai walk out of the room. Her picturesque face was surrounded by lingering haze. Sister Bao walked into the darkness. Sun Lang followed her silently. In a dark corner, he landed beside his nominal wife and said lightly, "I'm sorry. I haven't been able to give you a hug since we met again." Shui Baochai forced a smile and said in a low voice, something like a slow-acting poison in Grandma's body. "It's acting up faster. The doctors can't do anything about her coma, and they don't even know the reason. I don't know medicine, but I can see that the true qi in her body is out of control in a strange way. But I can't stop it. I can't touch her, or it will make things worse." Sun Lang sighed and continued, "Then we can only put our hopes on the doctors. The doctors in Jinling are limited. There are no real great doctors here. But we do." Shui Baochai said, "Lu Shujin, Master Lu, is proficient in medicine. When I was in Mingzhou a few days ago, I saw her writing a medical book called Medicine. She must be very confident." She looked at Sun Lang with expectation and worry in her eyes. "Are you going to bring her here?" Jinling was across half of the empire from Mingzhou. The fastest way to get there was Sun Lang's seraph. In fact, he had brought Jia Sherdao, Lin Daiyu, and Shui Baochai to Jinling in the fastest way. Of course, he could also bring Lu Shujin to Jinling in the same way. Sun Lang looked down and said lightly, "Let me think. Let me think." Shui Baochai did not say anything, nor did she urge him. This meant that Sun Lang would have to leave Jinling for a long time. Even with the blazing angel's speed, it would take at least half a day for him to make a round trip to Mingzhou. With Sun Lang's suspicious personality, he would definitely consider whether this was a trick of the enemy to lure the tiger away from the mountain. The two of them stood facing each other. After a long silence, Shui Baochai said softly, "You always have your own plans. You always think things through carefully. Men are in charge of external affairs while women are in charge of domestic affairs. This kind of thing is supposed to be decided by you. So I just want to say something to you." Sun Lang asked, "What?" Sister Bao looked at him and said calmly, "You don't have to feel any pressure or responsibility. Do as you wish. We will support all your decisions and accept all the results. You don't owe the Rongwa family anything. On the contrary, the Rongwa family owes you a lot. If you hadn't appeared in this world when Jiang died, the Rongwa family wouldn't have had 6 years of glory. Instead, they would have lost their last bloodline. The situation would be far worse than it is today. So, do you understand? You have to think more about yourself in everything. You have done enough for the Jia family. You have sacrificed enough for the Jia family. Sun Lang listened calmly and smiled in the end. Does this count as a girl helping her husband? Shui Baochai looked at him and smiled. This is called following your husband after marriage. You are Sun Lang. Naturally, I have to plan for you instead of putting the family first. Sun Lang nodded. Thank you. Fortunately, I told you the truth before this. Otherwise, the situation would have been even worse. If Shui Baochai and Lin Daiyu didn't know the inside story, they would have forced Sun Lang to bring Lu Shujin here quickly after the Dowager Duchess fell ill. If Sun Lang showed a trace of refusal, it would have caused a quarrel and even a rift between the two sides. This would have made Sun Lang even more furious. Shui Baochai snorted with a look that said, "This is the meaning of being honest with each other, being able to support each other. Many misunderstandings and gaps are due to a lack of communication. More than half of the world's problems originate from this. You call yourself a master of the art of war, but you don't even know this?" Sun Lang shook his head. Those closely involved cannot see clearly. How could it be so easy to see through? But you should understand now. So, do it without worry. In Jinling, you are not fighting alone. Pinner, your good brother, and I all know your secrets. We know your past. We know the pain you bear, and we know the future you face. No matter what happens, as long as it is your decision, we will calmly accept it because in our hearts, you are the most important. Shui Baochai said softly, so do it without worry. Sun Lang grunted. I understand, don't worry. I've always been at ease. Sister Bao smiled. Then go. Before that, I want to give you something. Sun Lang pointed at the sword in Shui Baochai's hand. Give me the sword. Madame Xing had been assassinated and the Dowager Duchess had fainted. The situation in the Ronghua Manor had reached its most tense moment. The entire manor had implemented the highest level of martial law. Even when entering and exiting the Dowager Duchess's room, Shui Baochai and the others carried weapons in case of an emergency. Now, she had a sword of extraordinary quality tied to her waist. Hearing this, Sister Bao untied the sword in her hand and handed it to Sun Lang, sheathed and all. After handing over the sword, Shui Baochai felt her vision blur. Sun Lang had already unsheathed the sword. The tip of the sword did not give off any sword light, nor did it make any sound. However, in Sister Bao's eyes, when the sword was in Sun Lang's hand, it seemed to have a spirit of its own. Although the sword was made by a famous craftsman, it was only a treasure among ordinary metals. In terms of sharpness and power, it naturally could not be compared to the imperial armies. However, when it was in Sun Lang's hands, everything was different. This was because the wielder of the sword was the strongest sword saint in the world. Even if it was the crudest metal sword, in the hands of a true expert, it could unleash a terrifying power that could destroy gold and break jade. Sun Lang shook the sword. Then, the slender and tough body of the sword softened and came out of the sword guard. The blade of the sword even turned into something similar to liquid. It was a flowing metal that was controlled by an invisible force, reshaping its shape in the air and even changing its volume. Sun Lang held the hilt of the sword in his right hand and the scabbard in his left. At this moment, his hands loosened and the hilt and scabbard also floated in the air. Then, he waved his hand, and the soil in the garden not far away slowly rose. Some tiny particles floated up from the soil. They did not look like soil, but something else. Those particles flew over quickly and merged into the liquefied blade, into the slots of the sword guard, and even into the scabbard. The stream of metal that the blade of the sword had turned into was like a river that crossed the void. It floated in the air, flowing, twisting, and finally turned back into the shape of a sword. It was exactly the same as before. However, Shui Baochai knew that this sword was no longer the same as before. But what was the point of this? Turning an ordinary sword into a rare divine weapon. Although it was a dazzling power, no matter how sharp the metal was, it could not be compared to the Imperial army. If she were to encounter a fierce battle, she would definitely summon the Imperial army directly. She would not need this sword. She asked, "What are you doing?" Sun Lang replied, "A container." The blade returned to the sword guard and fell into Sun Lang's hand. He reached out and touched the blade. Then, A slight but terrifying change appeared on the sword. It finally could not help but let out a faint trembling sound. Then, it disappeared without a trace. Sun Lang had returned the sword to the scabbard as quickly as possible. Then, he returned the sword to Xue Baochai. Sister Bao took the sword, and her expression immediately changed. As a high-ranking general of the empire, she was also in charge of the powerful imperial army. It was because of this that she knew what was good for her. At this moment, she felt that she was holding a calm but terrifying sun in her hand. Endless light and heat were bound in a small shell. Her voice trembled as she asked, "What is this?" Sun Lang concisely said, "This is the Gold Glory sacred sword. It had originally merged into Bai Yue's body. He used the last bit of his soul and glory to reforge it. It has substance, but is formless. So, if you want to use it, you will need a container that can hold it." Xue Baochai was very smart. She understood at once. Self-defense. Yes, Sun Lang said, "Although I feel that you will probably not be in danger, Madame Xing's matter reminded me that I cannot place my hopes on the enemy's understanding. In these few days, you and Pin will guard the old madam. Don't go anywhere and don't let her guard down. Although Pin Er's personality is colder than yours, she's a bit naive in some matters. It is easy for her to slack off in unexpected places. You're different, so I will give this sword to you." Sister Bao rolled her eyes. "Are you saying that I appear to be friendly on the surface and treat everyone well? But in my heart, I have never truly trusted anyone and am a heartless woman with a warm and cold face." Sun Lang smiled slightly. "You trust me, don't you?" Xue Baochai was startled. She reached out and tapped Sun Lang's forehead. "You've progressed quite quickly." Sun Lang withdrew his smile. "So, I'll leave it to you. Since we have already treated each other with sincerity, and you have also made a request of me, I will also make a request of you. For me, the old Madame Sure is an obsession of mine, a beautiful memory of the past. Although the memory is beautiful and the old woman is kind, in the end, it cannot compare to the two of you. I am Sun Lang and not Jiaing. You are the people I must protect. In my heart, you surpass everything in the Rongwa manner." Sun Lang said in a low voice, "So, no matter when or where, I must first ensure my own safety. You wish for me to live well, but you're the source of my peace. Do you understand?" Xue Baochai pursed her lips and smiled. "We? Are you talking about me and Pinner?" Sun Lang used his finger to scratch his face. "In this kind of situation, let's not talk about other things that spoil the mood." He took 2 steps back. "Then, I'll leave first." Xue Baochai unconsciously asked, "What are you going to do?" "Of course, I'm going to have a good contest with an old friend." Chapter 817. The moon was high in the sky, and the night was getting darker. Old Matriarch Sure vomited blood and fainted. Rongwa Manor was in chaos, but Ningwa Manor, which was next door to Rongwa Manor, was much calmer. It was just that the security was tighter than usual. In order to prevent unnecessary trouble, this news was only revealed to a small number of loyal confidants. Therefore, Ningwa Mansion appeared calm on the surface, as if nothing had happened. However, the vigilance in secret was much stronger. In order not to disturb the women, Jia Su rested in the study room. Anyway, the bamboo study room had everything. There was a bedroom, and it was quiet, so Duke Ning rested there. Incense was lit in the room, and it was quiet outside. The most elite guards in the residence were standing guard outside. Not even a fly could get in. In the bedroom, Jia Su was lying quietly on the bed, seemingly in a deep sleep. But the next moment, he opened his eyes. There was someone standing by the window, seemingly admiring the scenery outside. However, it was dark outside, and he couldn't see anything, so he didn't know what he was admiring. That person said indifferently, "It's about time, right?" Jiasu asked about what. This person was the lobbyist from before, the mister who had manipulated King Zhongshuan like a puppet. Jiasu's tone was very normal. It seemed like this person had been here for a long time. That person replied, "Let me tell you what happened just now. Your son came by earlier and heard that you were sleeping, so he didn't disturb you. Do you know what happened? Just this evening, Rongwa Manor's Madame Xing died." Jiasu's eyes darkened. You killed her? That person looked back at him and smiled meaningfully. Of course not. Jiasu's tone turned cold. Then who was it? The man smiled and said, Sun Lang has told you about Madame Ma, right? Sun Lang also told you what Madame Ma was doing in Ronga Manor, right? This kid is very good at lying. He will use 99% of the truth to cover up the slightest lie. So what he said is always correct. Old Madame Ma had already bribed old Madame Wang. At that time, the two of them also acted together. They bumped into Sun Lang and were torn to pieces by him. You must really want to know why Sun Lang is so angry. In fact, there is no other reason than that I ordered Madame Ma to expose Sun Lang's identity. Unfortunately, that kid's actions are faster than his words. He could even infer what Madame Ma was going to say from the trembling of her throat. Oh, that's a bit exaggerated. Anyway, Madame Ma is dead, and so is Nanny Wang. Nanny Wang is Madame Xing's personal servant. You know this, right? The meaning behind his words was obvious. Jiasu looked at the man and said coldly, The way you speak is quite similar to Sun Lang. That person was stunned at first, then sighed and said, Indeed, a little. I used to be the person who knew him the best and had done a lot of research on him. So, I was led away by him. Wait, what's with that look? Do you think I'm an undercover agent? Jiasu said faintly, It does look like it. That person shook his head and sneered. Are you kidding me? If Sun Lang wanted to deal with you, would he need to go through so much trouble? It's more like I'm an undercover agent hiding on the Emperor's side. Duke Ning said faintly, That's true. And then? And then, this matter alarmed old Madame Sure. You know that the group of girls in Rongwa's mansion had been hiding it from old Madame. Now, they couldn't hide it anymore. Old Madame also found that Wang Shifeng was not around, so Wang Rin's matter couldn't be hidden anymore. Once Wang Rin's matter couldn't be hidden anymore, Wang Wangxing's matter couldn't be hidden anymore. As he said this, he spread out his hands and said, So, when old Madame knew so many things at once, she was anxious and angry. She spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot and fell into a coma. What do you think this is called? Jiasu suddenly sat up and his expression became fierce. Don't play with fire. Don't worry. I've always done things appropriately. Plus, the matter in Jinling is like dancing on a tightrope. I have to be careful and consider the consequences before doing anything. I've never done such a humiliating job in my life. But when I think about it, His Majesty and the other officials in the imperial court are also humiliated like me. I feel much better. That person looked at Jiasu and waved his hand. Don't worry, old Madame will be fine. Jiasu said coldly, You poisoned her. It's not poison. It's good for her, but there are some side effects. That person smiled and said, You'll know everything after the truth is out. This is also my agreement with you. Old Madame will be fine. You can rest assured. Jiasu said, If you really want me to rest assured, you should give me the antidote now. That person shook his head and said, No, I can't do that. It's not that I don't trust you. Think about it. Old Madame's body suddenly recovered. Isn't that strange? With Sun Lang's intelligence, he can think of too many things at once. You don't want to alarm him too early in case your son gets involved, right? Jiasu's eyes became colder. Don't look at me like that. I know you don't trust me, but it's okay. I just want to cooperate. Don't trust me. I've been showing my sincerity. For example, I've never planned to involve your good son in this, and I've never touched his brain. The man's smile was still on his face. Let's continue. The old lady's coma is actually not a bad thing, because it allows you to see a person more clearly. Jiasu's expression changed, and his tone became calm again. What? That person smiled faintly. Your dear nephew, after his grandmother who doted on him so much vomited blood and fainted. He remained indifferent. He did not show up, nor did he treat her injuries. He did not even plan to do anything. Jiasu sneered and said, You know it again. Yes, of course I know. If you don't believe me, you can ask your son. Your son wanted to tell you this before, but you were resting, so he left. Ah, that's great. The son took the initiative to take over the family business when his father was injured. Seeing Jiasu's expression becoming unfriendly again, that person hurriedly changed his words. So, do you understand now? Sun Lang's feelings toward Rongwa Mansion are very complicated. He has more hatred in his heart because of Jia Sherdao and Shui Baochai, but hatred definitely prevails. At least on this matter, he's very coldly weighing the pros and cons. Old Madame Sher's coma doesn't affect his emotions because he's not Jiaing, so he can make a rational choice. Jia Su asked, "What choice?" That person pointed at his head and said, "Both Rong Mansion and Ning Mansion have found famous doctors to treat old Madame Sher's body, but they still can't do anything because they're not capable enough." And coincidentally, Lu Shujin, who was famous in the military back then, is in Mingzhou now. He has a quick-fire device and is very fast. If he wants, he could drive that thing to Mingzhou now and come back tomorrow afternoon at the latest. Jia Su's eyes flashed with gloom. "You understand?" "Obviously, he won't." That person laughed. "I guess he won't, at least not tonight, because he doesn't care about old Matriarch Sher's life and death. He has seen too many deaths. He has a big picture. He is cautious. He is suspicious, so he won't act rashly. He is such a person. After experiencing that kind of thing, he has become indifferent to life and death." Jia Su said, "You really know him well." "Of course. If not, why would things be so troublesome?" That person was still smiling. "If he wasn't like this, then we would have captured all of his old acquaintances, friends, lovers, and the people from Rongwa Manor. We'll capture as many as we can and use them as bargaining chips to force Sun Lang to sit down and talk. But that won't work. As I said, Sun Lang has lost his mind. It's useless even if we capture all of his old acquaintances and friends. Sun Lang will admit that they're dead. Even if we put them in prison wagons, put a knife to their necks, and ask them to persuade Sun Lang to surrender, Sun Lang would only calmly say sorry and then kill his old friends first, and then kill everyone in this world. The funniest thing is that he can really kill everyone, as long as he has patience and time. Unfortunately, for him, both are more than enough." At this point, the person's smile finally had a trace of tiredness and headache. "Now you should understand why we're so frustrated, right?" Jia Su said lightly. "You reap what you sow. All right, now that things have come to this, there's no need to be so harsh." The person smiled. "You're 70% convinced now and 30% doubtful. But don't worry, we still have time. We can even make a bet." "What bet?" "Bet on Sun Lang's movement tonight," the person said. The man said, "The best part is not tonight. Tonight is just the prelude. I bet that he won't go to Mingzhou to find Lu Shuren tonight because he doesn't care about the old madam's life. He will suspect that this is a trap to lure the tiger away from the mountain. So he will release the bait and take advantage of the situation to set up a few cute traps for us. Then what are you going to do?" The person snapped his fingers. "Play with him." Then he turned around and smiled at Jia Su. "You'll be able to watch a good show." Jia Su looked at the mysterious person and said with a complicated tone, "But until now, I still don't know your real goal." The person smiled. "Sometimes, ignorance is the greatest happiness." Jia Su scoffed. "I don't even know your name." "My name?" That person thought for a while and shrugged. "A name is just a code name. I don't have a name in the first place. I just chose a more suitable name for the convenience of doing things. This name comes from a very powerful person. However, this person is not in this world, so it's fine to use it." He looked at Jia Su and smiled. "You can call me Su Qin." Chapter 8:18. Old Lady Sure vomited blood? Why? In the hiding place, King Zhongshuan frowned. "I don't think we did anything." The old servant said lightly, "I heard that Madame Xing of the Rongwa residence died. This matter couldn't be hidden from the old lady of the Jiao residence. Not only that, but the matter of Wang Run and Wang Zixing also couldn't be hidden. It's not surprising that the old lady's mood fluctuated after hearing so much fatal news." "I see." The young prince smiled proudly. "That means our Marshal Jia must be in a terrible fix right now." "Huh, that's my dear grandmother we're talking about." But as he laughed, he frowned. "Madame Xing, the first madam of the Rongwa residence, the one who remarried? How did she die? We don't seem to have any plans to make a move on her." The old servant nodded. "We didn't." "Then who could it be?" "Could it be Sir?" It's not his style to act on his own. He would always ask for my permission first. King Zhongshuan pondered. Have you found out what happened? The old servant shook his head. The most we can do is find out what happened. As for the cause of Madame Xing's death, even the Rongwu residence is baffled, let alone us. It said that the residence was brightly lit and had many guards patrolling. Our spies couldn't get close. King Zhongshuan snorted. It's a pity that Jia Yuzuan can't be relied on anymore. Otherwise, we could have asked him as the prefect. But now, oomph. Just then, a laugh came from outside. Your Highness, you're a proud son of the heavens. You should look at the big picture when doing things, not at the small details. That's not your job. The cause of Madame Xing's death isn't worth mentioning. What's important is what her death means. King Zhongshuan's face lit up. Sir, a person pushed open the door and entered. The moonlight spilled on the ground, casting a shadow. The man who called himself Su Qin entered with a smile and bowed. Greetings, Your Highness. King Zhongshuan hurriedly helped Su Qin up and smiled. You've worked hard, sir. Su Qin said. I'm ashamed, but I didn't disappoint you. I have to congratulate Your Highness. King Zhongshuan was taken aback, and an unnatural expression appeared on his face. Could it be that Mr. killed Madame Xing? Su Qin waved his hand and said, No. The matter of Jinling is of great importance. This Su is only a strategist. How could I dare to go against His Highness' authority and harm people's lives? King Zhongshuan glanced at Su Qin, suppressing his suspicions. He finally knew that the monarch was suspicious, but he shouldn't show it, so he forced a smile. Of course I believe, sir, but if it wasn't sir, and it wasn't this king, then who did it? Su Qin smiled and said, This matter can be investigated later. Just like this Su said before, Wang Yi is of noble birth and has great ambitions. When doing things, you should plan the overall situation and not care about these minor details. Since Su Qin mentioned great ambitions, then it was naturally the ambition to achieve hegemony. When Su Qin said these words, although the young prince had a subtle feeling of your king lecturing me again in his heart, he still put on an expression of obedience. Please enlighten me, sir. Su Qin guided him patiently. Madame Xing's small life isn't worth mentioning, and it doesn't even matter who the murderer is. What's important is that her death was discovered by old Madame Shi, causing her to vomit blood and faint. Then this Su dares to ask Your Highness, who in Rongwu Manor is the most anxious after such a thing happened? The young prince was stunned at first, then said, If Jiaying still has a bit of conscience, then the most anxious should be her, followed by Jia Tanshun, Shui Baochai, and those other women. Su Qi nodded. Yes, that's right. But you know, Jiaying has outstanding military service and is good at scheming. At this time, on the surface, Jia Ying forged a golden imperial edict and had her brother pretend to be an imperial envoy. By swapping Wang Wangxing's corpse, this is killing two birds with one stone, beating the Shi family and Wang family until they can't raise their heads. With such a big advantage, he wanted to follow up with another attack. Under such a good situation, suddenly the bad news of Madame Xing's death and old Madame's coma came. What do you think he will think? Although hearing Ying boast again made King Zhongshuan very unhappy, he still answered honestly. If he wasn't blinded by familial love, he would definitely suspect that this is a trap. Yes, it does seem to be a trap. The doctors in Jinling are helpless against the old lady's coma. There are no real Xinglin miracle hands here, but there are in Mingzhou. According to the intelligence, the national champion Lu Shuren has broken off her relationship with the Heavenly Policy Mansion because of the case of Lu Zhan's demon transformation. She has joined Jia Ying's side and is currently in Mingzhou. King Zhongshuan's eyes lit up. So if Jia Ying is concerned about old Madame Shi's safety, she will definitely invite Lu Shuzhen over. But will he think that this is a trap and fall into a dilemma? Su Qi nodded. Yes, a dilemma. No matter who killed Madame Xing, this is an excellent opportunity. Once Jia Ying leaves Jinling, it means that Rongwu Manor will be completely empty. King Zhongshuan seemed to realize something. He smiled happily. Will he leave? Su Qin smiled. Su Qin also smiled. He is very cunning. After he escaped from the Great Barren Mountain, he didn't show his face for more than 2 years. No matter how much the widows of the Ronwa mansion cried all day, he turned a blind eye to them. The Great Barren Mountain changed him. This can be seen from his actions in the Ming and Qin prefectures. He no longer has any taboos and is no longer a hero. However, he still has family in his heart and a bit of conscience. King Zhongshuan continued, but familial love no longer has an overwhelming advantage. In his heart, rationality will prevail. He knows that this may be a trap, so he won't step into it. Su Qin's smile grew, but there will be people who will force him to go. King Zhongshuan also smiled. Shui Baochai, Lin Daiyu, Jia Shidao, and Jia Su. These people think that Jia Ying is still the Jia Ying of the past. The Jia Ying of the past would do anything for his family, but the Jia Ying of the present won't. Once their perception deviates, it will be the beginning of internal strife. Su Qin chuckled. What's more, Jia Su is already on our side. The two of them looked at each other and simultaneously let out the complacent and sinister laughter that belonged to the great villains. They probably felt that this laughter was too villainous. After a few laughs, the two slowly stopped. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. King Zhongshuan broke the silence. So what should we do? That depends on what Jiang wants to do, Su Qin said concisely. Su Qin concisely said, what we can think of, Jiang must have thought of as well. We can see that he is in a dilemma right now, and he must understand his own situation. He is not a person who will sit and wait for death. Since he feels that this is a trap, with his temperament, he will definitely fight back. King Zhongshuan asked, beat him at his own game. Yes, according to the intelligence, he has a very fast Lihua aircraft. It can travel across the sky at an extremely fast speed. Even the birds can't catch up with it. He used it to travel from the Bai Fort to Jin City in one night. It shouldn't take him long to travel from Jin City to Mingzhou City. Su Qin smiled. If I'm not wrong, the aircraft will take off from Ronghua Manor tonight. The young prince wasn't stupid. Is it a bait? Yes, it's a Li fire aircraft. Although it's a strange technique, it has its own merits. As far as I know, the aircraft is most likely sentient and can fly on its own. It doesn't necessarily need a person to control it. I'm guessing that although it will take off tonight, there won't be anyone inside. There's such a thing. King Zhongshuan frowned. Doesn't this mean that Jia Ying can bring Lu Shujian here even if he doesn't show up personally? Yes, so that's what we need to do, Su Qin said. Although the aircraft can fly freely, it's still an inanimate object. Even if we designed it so that it can move freely like a robot, it lacks adaptability and its behavior is very rigid. So we need to let Jiang know that if he doesn't fly the aircraft himself, we have a way to stop or take it down. Moreover, Jinling is so far away from Mingzhou, and there's also Hanzhou in between. Would he be at ease letting this aircraft fly over the imperial capital? Moreover, he has to bring Lu Shujin back. Would he be at ease? King Zhongshuan frowned. But Sir said that the aircraft is extremely fast. Su Qin's expression was indifferent. This matter will be handled by me personally. Your Highness need not worry. The young prince's face lit up. With Sir taking action, there's nothing to lose. Su Qin smiled. Your Highness, don't let your guard down. Attacking the aircraft is just a part of the plan. Jiang isn't in the aircraft, so he's obviously set up a trap. He wants to use this as bait to lure us out. So we'll take advantage of this opportunity to tell him something. That is, if he dares to leave Jinling. We'll teach the Roma residents a lesson. King Zhongshuan clapped his hands and laughed. If he doesn't fly the aircraft himself, we'll take down his toy. If he leaves Jinling, we'll teach him a lesson in his backyard. Sir, you're indeed resourceful. Tonight's matter is enough to put Jia Ying in an even more difficult position. Yes, he found out that his plan has failed. Tomorrow, we'll have Jia Su add fuel to the fire and incite the Ronghua residents to force him to invite Lu Shujian. Then, we'll have a good show to watch. Su Qin smiled. That's why many wise people like to use open schemes. The sense of accomplishment of setting up a brilliant plan and forcing the enemy to die is amazing. Sir, you're truly my right-hand man. King Zhongshuan bowed. Sir, Please give me your orders on what to do during this journey. Sigh. It's a pity that the letters asking for help were only sent out in the afternoon. Even if we were in a hurry, we'd probably only be halfway there. Otherwise, we could have beaten Jia Ying at his own game tonight. But it doesn't matter. He's like a turtle in a jar anyway. We'll follow Sir's plan and play with Jia Ying first. It's not a bad idea to watch him struggle. Chapter 819. Ronwa Manor, Old Matriarch's Courtyard. The doctor had just left, leaving behind a secret ancestral medicine that had already been fed to the matriarch. The old matriarch's personal maid was using internal energy to unblock her master's meridians, while Shweb Baochai and Lin Dayu stood guard outside. Lin Dayu said in a low voice, "Why won't you let me go?" Shweb Baochai calmly said, "Sister Yuan Yang is slightly older than us. She has been serving the old matriarch in the manor all these years, so her state of mind is calm, and she has more time to cultivate, so her internal energy is stronger than ours. She is also the matriarch's personal disciple, so her internal energy is the same. As for us, we were born in the army and are skilled at killing, so we need to preserve our energy and be responsible for protecting her. After all, although Sister Yuanyang's internal energy is stronger than ours, she is inferior to us in terms of actual combat." Lin Dayu snorted. "She really has a lot of thoughts." Shwep Baochai only smiled. "These are troubled times, so we have to be careful." Just as Sun Lang had said, she was soft on the outside but hard on the inside. Although she appeared to be friendly, her heart was extremely calm and clear. She would not easily trust anyone. Moreover, her husband told her to be careful, so she was even more careful. So after separating from Sun Lang, she did not continue to circulate her energy to heal the matriarch. Not only that, she also dissuaded Lin Dayu. Her husband told them to be careful, and danger could come from any time and any place. Circulating energy to heal was when a martial artist was least prepared. She had to do her best to minimize all the variables and potential dangers. If something were to happen, she gripped the long sword in her hand tightly, and a steady stream of heat came from her palm. Even through the scabbard, she could feel the incomparably sharp aura of the metal sword. She was a martial artist of the Imperial Army. It was enough for her to feel the power of the weapon in her hand. Once it was unsheathed, it would definitely shake the earth and shake the heavens. No wonder my husband gave this sword to me. If it was Pinner, she would definitely sneak off somewhere and pull out to take a look. For martial artist, this was an irresistible temptation, but Shweb Baochai was able to suppress her martial artist's nature and curiosity. It was only a sword. If she wanted to see it, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. Right now, it was better to be a bit more steady. After all, my husband trusts me, she thought to herself, and then a slight but enchanting smile appeared on her face. At this moment, Lin Dayu suddenly nudged her with her elbow. "Hey, are you in heat? It's inappropriate for you to show such an expression now. Hurry up and wipe your saliva off." Shweb Baochai subconsciously touched her mouth and then looked at her reproachfully. "What are you saying?" Lin Dayu snorted and pouted slightly, looking a little jealous. "It's strange. My brother used to like me more. I'm so obedient and sensible. Why did he value you more after you got angry with him? It's so unfair. Is this what they call a crying child gets milk?" Hearing her say this, Shweb Baochai remembered how she had cried and yelled at Sun Lang, and her face turned red. At that time, she couldn't help but do such a daring thing. It was really not in line with her usual personality. Thinking about it now, it was really embarrassing. All right, I won't say any more." Lin Dayu snorted again. "Hurry up and tidy up your face. It'll be bad if someone sees you looking like you're in love." Shweb Baochai took a few deep breaths and circulated her inner breath to calm herself down. Then, she let out a long breath. "Much better," Lin Dayu said. "If your appearance was seen by my grandmother, you definitely couldn't explain it clearly. Your face is like peaches and plums, and your eyes are full of love. You don't look like a little widow whose husband has died. Wicked girl, I'll tear your mouth off if you say it again." Shui Baochai was a little shy and threatened in a low voice. Then, she seemed to think of something inside. Speaking of which, it's true. Although my grandmother is in a coma, it's not entirely a bad thing. Otherwise, with her eyesight, she may be able to see our changes. In the past, she had mistakenly thought that her husband had died, so she waited silently by herself. Now that her husband had appeared, the future was beautiful. Her mental state in the past and now was absolutely different. Even if she used her superb acting skills to deceive the majority of people, it was difficult to deceive the old madam's eyes. Because the old madam had experienced too many sad things and knew what despair was. And now, she hoped that her husband could deal with everything as soon as possible. Shui Baochai thought silently. Suddenly, Lin Daiyu, who was next to her, straightened up vigilantly. "What's that sound?" Shui Baochai was startled. She gripped the long sword in her hand tightly and listened carefully. A moment later, she frowned slightly. "This sound is a little familiar." It was already late at night. The lights could accurately distinguish class. Night was the night of the rich. The brothels were brightly lit, the pleasure boats were singing and laughing, and the luxurious mansions were filled with music. The people who were busy making a living went to bed early so that they could wake up in the dark the next day. In a dark street, Su Qin stood against the wind, his robes fluttering. He looked at the blazing angel flying into the sky and shook his head with a smile. "I say, isn't this too obvious? Are you planning to tell us that there's a trap here?" His helpless smile gradually turned cold. "Of course not. I think you always like to play with this kind of illusion and reality. Once no one stops your little toy, this blazing angel will immediately fly to Ming province, right? The illusion can become real at any time. Just like your dog face, it can change at will. So, I definitely can't let you do as you wish." Su Qin's figure suddenly disappeared in the breeze and rushed into the dark sky. His body seemed to have become weightless. Rather than calling him a martial artist, it would be better to call him a strange person from the profound water country. After all, no matter how high a martial artist Qin Gong was, they almost couldn't fly freely in the air. If they wanted to fly, they had to rely on the Imperial Army, but he didn't show any signs of using the Imperial Army. He himself was flying very quickly. He silently followed the blazing angel from afar. He followed him all the way to the sky and flew out of Ming province. The sky was like a curtain, and Jinling below his feet had shrunk into a small square that flickered with fire. Su Qin followed the blazing angel for a while and muttered to himself, "Let's start from here. What's the biggest enemy of aviation? I remember you saying the first is bad weather." The faint sound of thunder came from the sky. Then the clouds in the sky gathered. An invisible force was causing the weather to change, intertwining with the rumbling of thunder. Storms, lightning, and a sudden drop in temperature. This was the wrath of nature. It surrounded the greatest masterpiece of the live-fire country. Without a pilot to control it, the blazing angel's behavior was extremely rigid. If it was any other blazing angel, they would have a support holy soul and would have a strong sense of autonomy. But Sun Lang's blazing angel didn't have that. Therefore, the blazing angel that was flying like a donkey was disturbed by the weather. The stable body of the blazing angel kept tilting, and the storm that blew it had caused its nose to keep tilting. Su Qin looked at all of this from afar, and the smile on his face became wider and wider. The second enemy is naturally an incoming object, such as a bird, but I have a better choice. Slender icicles floated around him. They were condensed, polished, sharp, sturdy, and fatal. It was said that a bird could destroy an expensive plane. I don't know how sturdy this blazing angel is, and I don't know if your method is effective. But I'll give it a try. It's not my toy anyway. Su Qin showed an excited smile. Then, in the next moment, his smile froze on his face. It was silent, calm, abrupt, and terrifying. A sword energy tore through the sky. It seemed to have appeared here in an instant. Su Qin almost thought that this sword had cut through space, but it wasn't. It was because this sword was too fast. It flew like a meteor like light and lightning. It arrived in an instant. Under this sword, the thick thundercloud surrounding the blazing angel collapsed with a bang, and all the lightning and rain didn't disappear. Instead, they froze in the air. In the next moment, Su Qin saw the blazing angel that was flying crookedly turn around and float in the air. It opened its arms, the jet engine on its back reversed, and its two hands reached out with thick black pipes. Then, blazing streams of flame swept 360 degrees at the speed of a volcanic eruption, spraying on the thunderclouds that had gathered around it. At the same time, the incoming sword energy suddenly exploded. Fire, steam, lightning, and the exploding sword energy pushed all of this. The most terrifying power of nature spread out without any hindrance. It was like a magic bomb that raged outwards and blasted in all directions. It produced an indescribable power that engulfed everything. Su Qin had just cursed out the word fuck when he was engulfed by the magic effect. In the flames and lightning, his body suddenly collapsed and dissipated. It was as if the power of nature had torn apart his fragile body in an instant and obliterated all signs of life. The blazing angel hovered in the air for a while. Then it raised its hand and sprayed streams of flame, drawing an S and a B in the air. The boiling steam remained in the air. After doing all this, the blazing angel turned around and rushed back to Jinling. And on a small mountain outside the city, some kind of strange power was gathering again. Su Qin's face emerged from the shadows. He shook his hand, his graceful face rather haggard. Damn, I was almost caught by the sword energy. Although the visual effect of the move just now was excellent, it was not very lethal to Su Qin. However, the viciousness of this move did not lie in its killing power, but in the sword energy that exploded in all directions. Using the power of fire, steam, and lightning to spread out to the greatest extent, the moment the tiny sword energy came into contact with a physical body, it would be like maggots on the bones of the target. Then, a super violent person who could fight would follow after you, and he would be able to punch you 800 times in a second. You are still so cunning. Unfortunately, you still don't know what this battle is about. Su Qin muttered to himself. He looked at the blazing angel descending from the sky and smacked his lips. Actually, I thought that you were inside the blazing angel, but now it seems that you are not. In other words, the quick-witted strategist gave a subtle sigh. In other words, Your Highness, it seems that you will have to suffer a small loss tonight. But don't worry, because very soon you will miss this small setback tonight. Chapter 820. In fact, Su Qin's reaction had been very timely. He had run very quickly. About 2 minutes after he disappeared, the blazing angel who had returned to Jinling returned to the place where the explosion had occurred. The humanoid armor hovered in the air, propelled by the jets. Sun Lang stood at the head of the armor and sensed the power of nature that had yet to dissipate. The high temperature had already dissipated, but the mixed clouds remained where they were. Occasionally, faint sparks of electricity would appear. Sun Lang sensed the darkness before him. A moment later, he indifferently said, as expected, the enemy had not been destroyed, but disappeared, or rather disintegrated. This situation was very familiar. He recalled that day in the Bai clan castle, when a mysterious power had awakened the gold spirit in by Yue's body. Sword Spirit Rushu had obtained the power to break free of his shackles and transform into a terrifying monster. When that energy began to travel through the earth toward by Yue, Sun Lang immediately sensed the energy fluctuations. Within 3 seconds, an incomparably sharp sword chi soared into the sky and blasted toward the mountain where the energy had risen. Even if the 7 luminary sword saint were here, he would not be able to easily block this attack. But this attack still landed on empty air. By the time Sun Lang arrived at the scene, the target had disappeared without a trace except for some torn pieces of cloth. He called upon the power of the earth to restore the scene and came to an unbelievable conclusion. The enemy had not been killed by the sword chi, but had disintegrated on his own. Basically, The situation before him was exactly the same. This can't be a coincidence. Sun Lang sensed his surroundings and compared the scene before. The similarities between the two could explain some problems. The disintegration was so neat. Considering your identity and the mission you have yet to complete, this can only mean one thing. This is not suicide, but escape. You use this method of disintegration to escape. You're not human, and you can revive. But no human had the ability to come and go as they pleased and impossible to guard against. But Sun Lang did not find it troublesome. In his dictionary, there was no such thing as retreat in the face of difficulties. If I can't do anything to you, then why are you running? Moreover, he fled before I arrived. He didn't even dare to provoke me. Sun Lang sneered. This can only mean one thing. That is, when I see you, you can't run away, and I can kill you. Also, I think I know what you are. Sun Lang lightly tapped his feet and jumped up. The blazing angel below opened up in the air and sucked Sun Lang into it. The gorgeous battle armor then transformed and spun as it dived down in the form of wings, returning to the Jinling government office. Now that I know who you are, let's continue playing. In Jinling City. The magistrate's office was open and above board, and its location was very particular. It was built with dignity in mind, and in order to prevent civil servants from secretly visiting prostitutes, the location of the magistrate's office was very far away from the brothels and red light districts. It was not in the middle of the city, and in order to practice the principle of being among the masses, it was close to the residential area. Therefore, this place had nothing to do with the hustle and bustle of the city. After night fell, the surroundings were pitch black. Only the two lanterns in front of the magistrate's office were always lit, indicating the place of order and the place of governance. Under the cover of the night, a group of mysterious night walkers was slowly approaching the office, taking advantage of the chaos to attack the death row prison. This was their mission, to kill the Sher brothers and Wang Qi at all costs. This was their mission. If they could take advantage of the chaos to kill Jia Yuzuan, that would be even better. The person who came up with such a brilliant plan was none other than Prince Zhongshan. In order to humiliate Jia Ying and create even more chaos, it could be said that he had put in a lot of effort tonight. He dispatched people, assigned tasks, and even buried a few powerful backups. If it wasn't for the old servant's dissuasion, he would have personally taken command. However, it didn't matter. The daughter of a rich family wouldn't sit under the awning. Moreover, tonight was only the prelude. The reinforcements would arrive tomorrow night at the latest. When the reinforcements arrived, they would join forces with several peerless experts. Even if Jia Ying had wings on her back, she wouldn't be able to fly out of Jinling's sky. At this time, Prince Zhongshuan's carefully selected group of capable people dressed in night clothes quietly approached the Jinling government office. Before they set out, they had already memorized the location of the death row prison, the ventilation system, and the back of the house. They had all memorized it. They also brought powerful poisonous gas and explosive grenades. Although the firearms of the Lihua kingdom were despised by the majority of martial artists, the people who did dirty work liked them very much. For people who didn't have the dignity of martial arts, anything that could kill people was good. So this time, they would definitely be able to complete the mission, or so they thought. But they thought too much. One of the night walkers was a grenadier. He was an abandoned disciple of a hidden weapons sect. His skills with hidden weapons were passable, but more importantly, the sect that used hidden weapons was a bit shameless. This guy's level of shamelessness was also outstanding among his fellow sect members. He didn't care about anything. Anything that could kill people was good, so most of the explosive grenades and poisonous gas bombs were in his hands. When a fight broke out, he would be responsible for throwing these cute little things where they should be thrown. For example, the vent of the death row prison, the hall of the government office, the office of the third squad of Yamen runners, the back of the prefectural magistrate's house, where he wanted to throw them. He licked his lips and followed his companion in stealth. His fingertips trembled slightly as he lightly ran them across the row of explosive grenades at his waist. The old Harry made things very crudely, just like the surface of this thing. It wasn't smooth at all, but for him, The rough feeling from his fingertips was better than the smooth skin of all the beautiful women in the world. Especially when these iron flowers bloomed, the light and heat, the scattered waves of air, was simply the most gorgeous scenery in the world. Yes, he liked explosions. When he thought of the chaos and death that was about to happen, he liked it very much. But a hand pressed down on his shoulder. He was startled at first, then thought that something was wrong with his companion behind him. He wanted to turn around, but he heard a very familiar sound, a crisp click. He couldn't be more familiar with this sound. It was the sound of the explosive grenade's latch being pulled out from his waist. Then a voice rang in his ears. While I was playing Far Cry 3, I liked to use this move. He felt a pain in his buttocks as a huge force kicked him forward, towards his companion who didn't feel anything. This hidden weapon abandoned disciple widened his eyes and reached for his waist in horror, but boom! Waves of air swirled in the air, broken pieces scattered in all directions. Burning flesh and broken limbs flew in all directions. The explosive light was like lightning, instantly illuminating the area where the government office was. It was like a signal. In a split second, flames ignited and shouts of killing came from all directions. In front of them, there was the sound of horse hooves, and a group of riders came from afar, led by a man holding an iron spear, shouting loudly. It was the head of the Sure family, Sure Ichiwan. His 2 sons were here, and they were going to be attacked tonight. How could he not come? What's more, he was a henchman of Tensei province, and the other party was the prince of Zhongshuan, who had bad intentions. This group of night walkers encountered a tactical sneak attack and were thrown off their horses by their own grenade throwers. Even if they weren't torn apart by the first round of explosions, they were still badly shaken by the aftershocks. They also didn't receive the firearms training of the Lihua kingdom, so at this moment, their ears were roaring and the world was spinning. How could they end up well when they bumped into the hostile cavalry? Even if they wanted to fight back, Sure Ichiwan had already raised his spear into the air. At the same time, the sound of gongs and drums could be heard from the yamen. 3 groups of yamen runners and various Dianli rushed out, holding torches and bows as they shouted. They shot at anyone in dark clothes. Although these people were not good at fighting, the Empire valued martial arts. Those who could be yamen runners all had some strength, so it was easy for them to shoot arrows. Sure family's knights and Jinling's bailiffs cooperated with each other, and the government office was brightly lit, so the attackers couldn't hide at all. Seeing that the enemy was already prepared, it was a huge blow to the morale of the night walkers. Many people had already begun to think of retreating because the Lord had told them that if they couldn't succeed, they shouldn't continue to fight, but instead, they should create chaos and try to escape. They shouldn't make unnecessary sacrifices. The leaders of the night walkers were hesitating. Now the enemy was already prepared, and the Sure family's brothers and Wang Qi might have already moved, so it seemed that they couldn't kill them. But the Lord's order also included attacking Jinling's magistrate, Jia Yutsuan, so they didn't know if they had a chance. If they couldn't even complete a task, they would be incompetent. Just when they were thinking about this, a loud explosion came from the government office, and a headless body flew out. The next moment, the magistrate rushed out with a furious face. He was wearing a scarlet official robe with a jade belt around his waist. His chest was embroidered with cloud geese holding pearls, and he wore a pair of boots that soared through the wind and clouds. His eyes were like lightning, and his expression was dignified. He looked like an official of his parents. The slightly white hair on his temples showed how much effort this prefectural magistrate had put in to make contributions to the people and the country. In addition, he was also carrying a golden mountain axe on his shoulder. There were a few strings of red and white things hanging on the blade of the axe, and they were dripping blood. Looking at the headless body that flew out, it was obvious that this poor assassin had a fierce kiss with something at the last moment of his life, and his entire head was blown into pieces. His head was blown up by the magistrate, a 4th-rank civil official, the parents of the people in Jinling, and Lord Jia Yutsuan, who was holding a golden mountain axe. Seeing this scene, whether it was the bailiffs or the attackers, their minds went blank for a second. The magistrate's roar echoed in the hall. This was the mayor's heartfelt hatred for the bad security in the city and the bad political environment of the country. Where is the law? Where's the law? Do you know what gentleman's politics is? Do you know what it means to not punish a scholar? Why do you even want to kill a civil official? It had to be said that if the mayor of Gotham City was so brave, then Bruce Wayne would have nothing to do with it. Although they were far away and couldn't talk to each other, but when the leaders of the Night Walkers saw this scene, they all had the same thought. Kill my ass, let's run away. Chapter 821. Defeat was like a landslide. Once their morale was gone, it was too late to say anything. Dead, wounded, birds, and beasts scattered. The bailiffs and Sure clan members began to clean up the battlefield and search for captives. Meanwhile, Lord Jai Yutsuin became the center of attention. It had to be said that for a fourth-rank magistrate to carry a huge golden mountain-splitting axe, there was always a kind of rebellious, violent feeling. It was very visually impactful, so it attracted the attention of many people. Lord Jia Yutsuin felt uncomfortable being stared at like that. In a fit of anger, he roared, "What are you looking at?" Sure Ichiyuan got off his horse with a subtle expression. The magistrate was furious. "What's wrong? What's wrong? This is a matter of life and death, and this axe is my family's martial art. If I don't use this, what else can I use?" Why don't you tell me?" Sure Ichiyuan awkwardly replied, "My lord, I just wanted to ask if my son is all right." The explosion had caused quite a commotion, and the aftermath was no less so. King Zhongshuan's spies had been keeping a close eye on the situation and were sending news back to their master as quickly as possible. Naturally, King Zhongshuan received news that his mission had failed. His face was a little embarrassed. Su Qin comforted him. "Your Highness, there's no need to worry. We didn't expect to succeed in the first place. Or rather, it's not important whether we succeeded or not. We were just showing Jia Ying our strength and attitude. We were telling him that if he dares to leave Jinling, we'll turn his back garden upside down." King Zhongshuan's face darkened. "Oomph, the Sure clan ruined my plans. I'll teach them a lesson." Su Qin asked again, "Your Highness, other than this group, what else did you arrange?" King Zhongshuan smiled. "Of course, the Rong and Ning prefectures. Don't be alarmed, sir. I know my limits. For example, when hunting, we can't force our prey too much. As for the Rong prefectures, I only arranged for a few people to spend a lot of money to hire some hooligans to cause a ruckus in the Rong prefectures." Su Qin's complexion changed slightly. He shook his head and said, "Your Highness has miscalculated. This plan won't work. Those people from all walks of life make a living in the streets of Jinling. Although they are unruly and greedy for money, don't forget who controls Jinling." King Zhongshan immediately realized his oversight. "The four great clans?" "That's right. Now that the Sure clan and the Wang clan have given in and the Sure clan has stepped in to help, it means that the majority of the power of the four clans is in the hands of Jiang. Her intelligence network is extremely fast. Not to mention other things, the leaders of those hooligans who have received orders from His Highness to set fire to Ronghua Manor will definitely know about this. Those leaders will definitely have connections with the four clans." King Zhongshuan's expression changed slightly. "In other words, the plan has been leaked?" The old servant beside him said indifferently, "Your Highness, you don't have to worry. Our operation is very secretive. Even if the people we sent out are captured, the enemy won't be able to get anything useful out of them because they don't know anything." Prince Zhongshan sighed. "Even sure, he has admitted defeat. Jiang must have found out as well. Those loyal people, it was this humble prince's oversight that harmed them. I have made a mistake. It's great that you can correct your mistakes." Su Qin added a saying that didn't exist in this world. "Your Highness, it's not a bad thing to make more mistakes when you're young." King Zhongshan nodded and said, "It seems that Ronghua Manor's operation has failed, but Ninghua Manor should be fine." Su Qin pursed his lips inwardly. "What did your Highness arrange?" Shouts rang out in Ninghua Manor. "How dare you!" The wind howled in Jia Su's study. Jia Shidao's fists and palms were flying as he fought with the uninvited guests. As he fought with the two attackers, he shouted, "Father, I can hold on. You're injured, don't act rashly." Jiasu's face was pale. His internal injuries hadn't fully healed yet, but he was well aware of this attack. Duke Ning sneered as he slowly took a short sword from the wall. His hand was on the hilt as he stared at the attackers like a viper, as if he would launch an earth-shattering attack in the next moment. Such a threat sent chills down their spines. Even though they remembered His Highness's instructions, the attackers still felt uneasy. Seeing Jiasu staring at them like a tiger watching its prey, they exchanged glances and decided to retreat immediately. Anyway, this operation was just a feint, and they could not hurt Jiasu. If they were hit by his sword, it would be a waste. At this moment, Jia Sherdao suddenly exclaimed. Jiasu's expression changed as he immediately drew his sword and prepared to charge at the daring attackers. But in the next moment, he heard a crisp sound. It was the sound of some metal object falling to the ground. In the midst of the fierce battle, the attackers suddenly saw a golden object fly out of Jia Sherdao's sleeve. They thought it was some kind of strange hidden weapon. Since they already wanted to retreat, they immediately took a few steps back and prepared to run. But the next moment, they also heard the sound of metal colliding. They looked down and saw a golden token the size of a palm lying on the ground. It was surrounded by a golden dragon, and the words "King is here" were written on it. This was a royal item, commonly known as the golden token arrow. In an instant, the eyes of the attackers shone brightly. Here was their chance to make a contribution. Almost at the same time, these masters pounced on the gold medal on the ground like hungry dogs. Jia Sherdao was shocked and tried to stop them with his palm. However, he was already struggling to resist the joint attack of several people. So how could he stop this hungry dog eating shit? In the blink of an eye, those people had already grabbed the golden token and ran away like a whirlwind. He couldn't stop them. Jia Sherdao chased after them, yelling loudly. But the more anxious he was, the more excited those hungry dogs ran. They jumped up and down in Duke Ning's mansion as if they were flying, and even jumped over the courtyard wall and disappeared into the darkness. Jia Sherdao couldn't catch up with them, and he didn't dare to spread the news. He stomped his feet and looked around with a gloomy and panicked expression, not knowing what to do. Jiasu's gloomy voice came from behind him. "Are you done acting? Is there any mechanism in the golden token?" Jia Sherdao's expression froze. After a moment, he turned back with a blushing face and scratched his head. "Father, it's windy at night. Why are you out? Also, how did you know?" Jiasu snorted. "How would I not know what tricks you have up your sleeves? Tell me, what's the mechanism in there?" Jia Sherdao shook his head. "I don't know. My brother found me tonight and took the golden token away. I don't know what he's doing in the corner mysteriously. After he returned it to me, he told me not to panic if there were assassins coming to attack you tonight. I just need to take the opportunity to throw the golden token away." Hearing this, Jiasu's face was expressionless, but his heart was in turmoil. How'd that kid know? Those assassins had made a great contribution, and the news naturally spread to King Zhongshuan. The young prince was surprised and delighted to hear that the team had made such a great contribution. He said, "Where's the golden token? Give it to me. I want to see how this bastard made it so real." Su Qin's expression changed slightly as he stopped him. "Young prince, be careful. I'm afraid there's a trap." King Zhongshuan frowned. "What trap?" Su Qin sneered inwardly. "Sunlang. Oh, Sunlang. How can I not know your cunning tricks? You must have hidden sword energy in the golden token. When the golden token is here, you'll be able to find us, right? Humph, since I've seen through it, I'll make you angry." So he said, "My lord, I'll go take a look first." The young prince didn't understand, but seeing Su Qin's insistence, he agreed. So Su Qin went out and followed the old servant's instructions all the way to the meeting point of the team of assassins. He scanned the night sky and frowned slightly. He didn't find any trace of Sun Lang. After entering and verifying his identity, he received the forged gold medallion from the hands of those people. After a few words of praise, Su Qin sensed this gold medallion. Soon, he discovered the almost undetectable sword chi. Petty tricks. He snorted. A moment later, the sword chi was dispersed. But this golden token feels a little strange. What kind of strange method was used to make it? Forget it. As long as there's no sword energy left, even if there's a trap inside, it's nothing to worry about. Although the best solution was to throw the golden token away, Su Qi knew that King Zhongshuan was actually very suspicious. If he didn't give the golden token to him, he would definitely think too much. With that in mind, Su Qi took the golden token back. The old servant also inspected it and frowned. This golden token seems a little strange, Su Qi said. Old mister, did you feel it too? King Zhongshuan was already holding the golden token in his hand. He looked it up and down and muttered, "This looks exactly like an imperial token. How did Jiang make it?" Of course, it was made with the power of the gold obsidian sacred sword. Ha! If you knew that Sun Lang had already obtained by Yue's sacred sword, you wouldn't be as relaxed as you are now, right? Su Qi laughed inwardly, but he said with a straight face, "I don't know. It should be some kind of trick." Jiang liked to think about these strange things back then. Strange skills. King Zhongshuan snorted disdainfully. Then he took the golden token in his hand and cracked it. It doesn't look like it was poured. Could it have been directly carved? Then his craftsmanship. At this point, King Zhongshuan couldn't finish his sentence, because he suddenly realized that the golden token was undergoing some kind of strange change. It was expanding and expanding, so much so that he could faintly see something strange flowing inside. Su Qi and the old servant were both shocked. "Your Highness, be careful." They reached out at almost the same time to grab the golden token in King Zhongshuan's hand. But everything happened too quickly. In an instant, the golden token inflated like a balloon and then exploded with a loud bang. Some kind of strange liquid violently burst out from it and shot out in all directions. Something terrible happened. Chapter 822. He was dumbfounded. If King Zhongshuan had any thoughts at this moment, he would definitely be dumbfounded. Su Qi and the old servant's martial arts were very high. Even at this critical moment, they were still able to block most of the explosive liquid with their palms and fists. However, there was still a small portion that landed on King Zhongshuan's body. The little prince was dumbfounded. At this moment, he seemed to have lost his soul and turned into a silly puppet. His mind was blank. He didn't know who he was, where he was, or what he wanted to do. He allowed the crowd to fiddle with him. Their anxious voices sounded distant, as if they were coming from the horizon. He could feel the jinqi that the old servant poured into his body. He could feel people stuffing pills into his mouth. There were people loudly and anxiously asking him how he felt. They must be afraid that the liquid was poisonous. But the little prince knew that the thing that had been dropped was not poisonous. His body was normal, and he didn't feel any pain. His consciousness was clear, and everything was normal. There were no signs of poisoning, except it stinks. It was very smelly. It was extremely smelly. The stench of a spiral explosion. It was an earth-shattering stench. If the stench had a color, then it must be the yellow of feces. If there was a smell in the netherworld, it would definitely be this smell. It was like a breath from hell. According to Buddhism, there are 18 levels of hell in the underworld. The fourth level is called the hell of boiling feces. The little prince used to be an arrogant expert who controlled his own fate, but now he was enlightened. Hell does exist. The scene in front of me is what a hell of boiling shit looks like. He was about to suffocate. Then, like Ma Jingtao, he opened his mouth wide, revealing a twisted expression of hopelessness. His mouth was wide open, and endless emotions shook his vocal cords, and he was about to let out a scream of despair and anger. The little prince's screams were muffled, because in the instant he started singing, two large hands simultaneously covered King Zhongshuan's mouth. It was Su Qi and the old servant, the two loyal and devoted helpers. Their hands were still stained with the evil of this world that had splashed onto them when they stopped the explosion, and they just mercilessly covered it with their hands. The little prince was like a little girl who had been forced to have oral sex. He made choked sounds and struggled violently. His eyes rolled back, and his body contorted like a salted fish jumping around on the shore. Su Qin, this drama queen, was still anxiously shouting in a low voice. He must have done it on purpose. Prince, a little impatience spoils great plans. Don't make a sound. Don't make any noise. There was a slight fluctuation in the old servant's voice. The old man was squinting his eyes as if nothing could move him. But today he seemed to be sighing. Is this shit? King Zhongshuan struggled even harder. As a member of the royal family, a descendant of the true dragon, he had received the most elite education from the royal family. He might have killed people, might have seen blood, might have seen darkness and cruelty that ordinary people could not imagine. These were all lessons that a member of the royal family had to learn. But it was clear that in the training he had received, there was absolutely nothing like what he had experienced today. Even the craziest royal tutor would not dare to make such a training plan. Yes, no one dared to soak the young princes in excrement to train their tolerance. Oh yes, in the future, probably, there will be. Su Qin also fell into deep thought. His situation was different from that of ordinary people. Although the smell was disgusting, and the scene was indeed a little disgusting, it was not enough to make him fly into a rage or turn pale with fright. In any case, he could block out his sense of smell and overcome the discomfort in his heart. This little loss was nothing. What was more important was what this meant. It was only now that Su Qin understood Sun Lang's sinister intentions. There was no doubt that Sun Lang had done something to the gold medallion. But now, it seemed that the sword energy hidden in the gold medallion was not used to locate the location, but to maintain the gold medallion's original state. In other words, once this sword energy was worn down, the fragile balance that maintained the gold medallion would be broken. With just a small push, it would collapse irreversibly, just like how it had just exploded. He had calculated all of this clearly. No, it wasn't just that. That sword energy definitely had a location function as well. If it was not worn down, it would report its location to Sun Lang. If it was worn down, it would activate the vicious mechanism in the gold medallion. It was another crazy double insurance. It really was Sun Lang style. Su Qin's expression was a little ugly. This feeling of losing after all the scheming, no one would feel good about it. At this moment, King Zhongshuan began to struggle even more violently, his arms and legs flailing wildly as he shot glances at them. His large eyes were sparkling, as if he was begging them to let go of him. This king won't shout for you to *king let go. Su Qin and the old servant looked at each other, then withdrew their hands and took a step back in unison. They were afraid of being beaten, but they were worrying too much. The young prince did not have the strength to hit anyone at all. He was still in a daze, extremely confused. He retched, coughed, and pinched his nose. After a while, he finally spoke, his voice filled with disbelief and disbelief. King Zhongshuan thumped his chest and stamped his feet. He's the scum of the army. At the very least, he was once a marshal. How can he be like this? Su Qin and the old servant were a little embarrassed. The old servant went up to support him. Your Highness, please. What are you still standing there for? Does this smell good? After such a blow, King Zhongshuan even forgot to scold Sun Lang. He trembled as he said, Hurry up and think of a way to dispel this smell. Your palms, your fists, your Imperial Army special techniques. Use them all on this prince. The speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Their gazes suddenly changed. Not good. The old servant threw out 2 palms. Su Qin summoned the wind of heaven and earth. For a moment, the air billowed and the fierce wind swirled inwards, forming a huge suction force that compressed the slowly dissipating aura of hell back to the center. Motherf *Ker. The explosive smell grew 3 times stronger. King Zhongshuan felt a deeper layer of life. He almost rolled his eyes as he roared. Are you guys blinded by *T? Your Highness, please forgive us. Su Qin shouted against the air billows. If this smell drifts out, Jiaeng will be able to find us. This is all part of his scheme. King Zhongshuan roared miserably. He finally remembered that he should be angry. Let him come. Son of a bitch. The shame of Tian Yuan. I'm gonna F asterisk king drown him in the latrine. Mother asterisk her. If Sun Lang really comes after us, forget about you. I'll be squashed to death in the latrine as well. Mother asterisk her. When did that little bastard Sun Lang have such a bad hobby? Su Qin continued to summon the wind to gather the dispersing stench. For a moment, the stench roiled and the evil aura gathered, like an altar of filth. The old servant went to pull King Zhongshuan. Your Highness, this place is no longer safe. We should move immediately to a backup hiding place. Men, find a few blankets, wet them with water, and put them on the prince. Prince Zhongshuan was a spoiled child of the royal family, so it was only natural that he was obsessed with cleanliness. Today, he had been tainted by the evilness of the world and was on the verge of collapse. Now that he heard this, his whole body trembled. No, no, this prince wants to change clothes now. I want to take a bath. I want to take a bath. At this critical moment, who would care about him? A few moments later, several wet blankets were placed on King Zhongshuan's body, completely concealing his scent. But there was a price to pay. The beautiful robe was quickly soaked by the water, which meant that the evil of this world that splashed on the little prince was mixing with him. That slippery feeling spread all over his body, and the poor little prince trembled all over. He howled, "You might as well just kill me." The old servant lifted King Zhongshuan onto his shoulder and said, "Your Highness must be joking. We're leaving now. Please don't speak too loudly, lest you attract the enemy." Although the biochemical attack just now had caused a ruckus, it didn't have any physical lethality. Other than the little prince, the rest of the people present were all well-trained elites, so they had a certain degree of resistance to this kind of terrifying aura. With an order, they quickly moved away. When a noble was in Jinling, the first thing to consider was safety. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. Needless to say, there were several top-secret hiding places, and there were more than a dozen escape routes. The vanguard opened away in front, and the rear guard brought up the rear. The most elite force surrounded the young prince and rushed all the way to another hiding place. The young prince seemed to have accepted his fate. He lay in the blankets and looked up at the sky, a manly tear in the corner of his eye. He was thinking about how things had turned out like this. Why was Jia Ying so vicious? He clearly had the upper hand, but he still suffered such humiliation today. That despicable Jia Ying. The grief and indignation in his heart were indescribable. This shameless thief had tarnished the glory of Tian Yuan's heroes. Mother asterisk her. This kind of person was actually an imperial marshal. This would make the world laugh their heads off. Then he heard the sound of hooves. There was a flash of fire in the distance. Su Qin whispered, "Be alert, be careful." The vanguard, "Go take a look." The young prince gritted his teeth and said, "Are they the lackeys Jia Ying sent to search for us?" Su Qin hesitated. "I don't think so. Looking at their route, it doesn't look like they're searching, but more like they're swaggering through the streets. And with the manpower of the Rongwa residents, they can't organize a large-scale city-wide search team." But in the next moment, they received an answer to their question. King Zhongshuan's ears twitched. He heard faint shouts coming from the other side. In the night wind, under the light of the fire, a group of people swaggered through the streets in the distance, shouting loudly. 1, 2, 3, let's go. They shouted in unison, spreading far and wide in the silent night. Courteous, loyal son of sh shit. Chapter 823. Understood. Understood. A chorus of shouts echoed in the air. They could hear it clearly in the night. On King Zhongshuan's side, the air suddenly became quiet. The cool breeze carried with it an almost undetectable scent. In the distance, fire dragons could be faintly seen moving through the streets. This was simply a feast for the entire city. Who knew how many troops were disturbing the people in the middle of the night, shouting the same slogan? This was the most sincere greeting that Marshal Jia Ying and all the people of Jinling sent to the visiting King Zhongshuan. A moment later, Su Qin added, Your Highness spent a lot of money to instigate the Jinling ruffians to cause trouble at Rongwa Manor, but they were probably stopped by the four great clans. Jiang even did the opposite. Now, the people running around the city are probably the idle ruffians of Jinling. Only the four great clans have the ability to order them around. The young prince's body was trembling. This was a complete humiliation, a taunt, an insult. This enmity was simply irreconcilable. So vicious, so hateful, so nauseating. Damn it. His face was splashed with feces, and he fled in a sorry state. Not only that, this bastard even had a backup plan. He had set up this whole city's battle array, beating gongs and drums and making a big fuss. After tonight, the whole city would be in an uproar. This kind of scandal, this kind of scandal, this kind of scandal. Not only did you do it, you even spread it around? King Zhongshuan listened to the distant shouts. Anger filled his chest and attacked his heart. All reason was thrown to the back of his mind. He hissed, kill them all, quickly." The old servant calmly said, "Your Highness, calm down. This must be the enemy's plan. It's easy to kill those ruffians, but since you've killed them, there will be traces left behind. Right now, the entire city is filled with Jia Ying spies. He can't find us, so he's using such a vicious method to provoke your Highness. He wants your Highness to be unable to restrain your anger, to make your Highness lose your reason. This is a trick. You must be aware of it. I understand the logic, but how the fuck am I supposed to endure this? One blow after another, endless humiliation, and a great loss of face. He had clearly been in high spirits just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, he was being humiliated by the Jia Ying that he looked down on. The little prince was so angry that his liver and lungs were about to explode. Motherf asterisk cur, Motherf asterisk cur, Motherf asterisk cur, Motherf asterisk cur. Why? You want to use this kind of method? What a shameless method. The young prince was already showing signs of being contaminated by the evils of this world. His sinister laughter was like the howls of hell. Go collect shit for me. Cow shit, sheep shit, pig shit, human shit. I want all of it. I want to dump all the shit in Jinling City into Rongwa's mansion. Go. The elites of the prince's mansion pretended not to hear him. A trace of disdain rose in Su Qin and the old servants' hearts. What happened tonight was clearly more like a farce, but the more farce it was, the more they could see something. Just by relying on this farce, Jia Ying was able to force King Zhongshuan into such a sorry state. She easily played with everything in the palm of her hand. The difference between the two was obvious. The most pitiful thing was that the victim didn't even know what was going on. His head was filled with shit, and he had almost lost his mind. He didn't know what today's events meant at all. The two of them looked at each other and saw the pills in each other's eyes. King Zhongshuan wanted to shout again, but Su Qin shouted in a low voice, "Your Highness, stop messing around. Do you want to play this kind of childish game with Jia Ying and make yourself a laughingstock in court? Do you want to report to His Majesty that you've piled all of Jinling City's shit in front of Rongwa's mansion? Do you want to announce today's scandal to the whole world? Do you think His Majesty will choose such a prince to be the crown prince?" The chattering King Zhongshuan, who had almost gone crazy, shut his mouth. In the next moment, his eyes gushed with intense tears of a man. He cried out loud. After all, this kind of setback, this kind of scene, was indeed a bit too much. It was not something a noble of his age could bear. This was simply the ultimate humiliation in the history of the empire. Since ancient times, no prince had ever been treated like this, nor had there ever been a high-ranking military official who could do such a thing. He cried out loud, "Teacher, old Fu, I hate it. Why is it like this? I clearly came on Imperial Father's orders, and I clearly had the upper hand. With these two advantages combined, how could it be like this?" Everyone quickened their pace, heading towards their hiding place. Along the way, Su Qin was softly comforting the young prince who had suffered the ultimate humiliation and also telling him to cry less loudly. After much persuasion, Bao Zhongshuan finally finished venting the grievances in his heart. They rushed to the new hiding place, arranged for sentries, inquired for information, dispatched troops, collected information, boiled water, prepared new clothes, and found spices. The prince needed to bathe and change clothes. Su Qin and the old servant were taking care of the aftermath. About an hour later, Prince Zhongshuan came out. He had already changed his clothes inside and out, and his emotions were stable. However, the skin on his neck and hands that were exposed were a little red. Su Qin guessed that a layer of skin had been rubbed off. The three people looked at each other, and the atmosphere was a bit awkward for a moment. King Zhongshuan bowed deeply. Tonight, this humble prince couldn't help himself and ended up in such a sorry state. It was simply rude of me to have let you two see a joke. I am truly ashamed. The old servant slightly bowed. Su Qin also bowed. Your Highness doesn't need to worry. Victory and defeat are common in war. Those who succeed must endure. Ordinary people can't endure. A small setback is nothing as long as you can win in the end. King Zhongshuan sighed and nodded sadly. This won't do. He looks like he's lost his spirit. I need to encourage him. Su Qin thought for a moment and had an idea. A smile appeared on his lips as he said lightly, "Failure isn't terrible. What's terrible is not having the courage to avenge the humiliation after failure. Your Highness, since things are already set in stone, you can't worry about it anymore. You have to focus on the future. Tonight, you did encounter something unbearable, but in this failure, there's a hidden hope of victory. Do you see it?" King Zhongshuan was stunned at first, then bowed. "I'd like to hear more." Su Qin had a confident smile on his face as he said, "Now it seems that Jia Shidao's accidental loss of the gold medal should be Jia Ying's plan to retreat. He had a trap in the medal to humiliate your Highness. What's his purpose? Is it just to humiliate your Highness?" King Zhongshuan slowly shook his head. "This person is so cunning and vicious. He must have his own reasons for acting after planning and laying down so many backup plans. It's definitely not just to humiliate me. He must have other plans. Your Highness is wise." Su Qin nodded. "An ordinary person wouldn't be able to endure such humiliation. If your Highness couldn't suppress your anger, what would you do?" King Zhongshuan said coldly, "I would do everything in my power to kill my way into Jia Ying's house to vent my anger. I would use the blood of Jia Ying's family to wash away this humiliation." Su Qin smiled. "Do you understand now, Your Highness?" The young prince was stunned. "That's his purpose? Could it be?" "Yes, Jia Ying is a cunning opponent. He clearly knew that this move would completely enrage Your Highness and cause Rongwa Manor to be retaliated against. But he still did it. This means that he has considered the consequences and is prepared." Su Qin said lightly, "This is a trap. This Su dares to guarantee that if Your Highness really does immediately seek revenge, then tonight, Rongwa Manor will become Your Highness's place of defeat. Based on what just happened, Jia Ying can calculate such a small matter with such precision. When it comes to the lives of his family members, he must have even more meticulous considerations and even more vicious plans. It might even allow him to reverse the situation in one fell swoop and secure a complete victory tonight." King Zhongshuan shivered. If it was before, he had been extremely disdainful of Jia Ying, this former marshal who had lost his divine sword. Now his thoughts had quietly changed. No matter what, this person was so clever that he was shameless. But when he heard this, he was still a little displeased. What is teacher trying to say? Su Qin shook his head and smiled. "Does Your Highness still not understand? Tonight, the Dowager Duchess fell ill, so Jia Ying should have immediately flown the Leaf Fire flying vessel to pick up Lu Shujian. But when we tried to stop him, he was met with such a decisive counterattack and provocation, using this method to provoke Your Highness's anger." King Zhongshuan's expression suddenly changed. He exclaimed in surprise, "Jia Ying can't sit still anymore. He can't hold back." Su Qin smiled like a wise king and nodded. "Yes, that's right. He has a premonition that he will be caught in a dilemma because of the Dowager Duchess, and even be forced and begged by his family members. He feels that if he drags on, things will get worse, so he might as well take the risk and take the initiative to force Your Highness to fight. seeking survival in the midst of death. This is his plan. Tonight's chaos has drawn our attention in circles. It was originally a good time to send the Leaf Fire flying vessel to Ming Province. But this Su is certain that the Leaf Fire armament is still in the Rongwo residence, because that flying vessel is also an excellent fighting force. Since Jia Ying is preparing to fight tonight, he will not let such an important fighting force leave Jinling, because he still needs to rely on that Leaf Fire armament to fight. King Zhongshuan's body shook when he heard this, the flame of hope flickering in his eyes. Su Qin's words gave him hope for a counterattack. He looked at Su Qin and bowed again. "Teacher, please teach me." Su Qin smiled confidently. "Since Jia Ying is eager to fight, then we have to be careful. Your Highness said before that you have sent people to ask for reinforcements, so when the reinforcements are in place, we can't act rashly. No matter how Jia Ying provokes us, we have to act calmly. Since Jia Ying is unwilling to let that flying vessel leave Jinling, then let's give him a push. Since he's attacking the heart, then we'll attack the heart as well." King Zhongshuan nodded repeatedly. He clenched his fists, his anger finally reaching its peak. "We must make him pay the price. I'm going to write a few more letters asking for reinforcements." Su Qin lowered his head. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The time was almost right. Chapter 824. Tonight, many people in Jinling would not be able to sleep. In the Ningwa mansion, Jiasu's face was dark as he listened to the report from his subordinate. After the assassins retreated, he immediately sent people out to gather information. Tonight's chaos in Jinling was orderly, and many strange things had happened. First of all, there was the sound of a huge explosion and battle cries coming from the Jinling government office. The spies from the public house who went to investigate saw the Ishur family's caravan, as well as the scattered corpses. More importantly, they saw the magistrate, Jia Yutsuan, at the scene, commanding the troops in the government office. The old man was carrying a flashy golden-back mountain axe, and the blade of the axe was still dripping with blood. He looked like he was about to swallow someone whole. Coupled with his official robe, he was simply like a mountain king wearing a monkey crown. His whole person exuded the aura of a wild and fierce bandit. In addition, there was also a big carnival in the whole city. All the local ruffians and hooligans in the city came out in full force, forming gangs and calling friends. They held torches and walked around the city, shouting incomprehensible slogans. Vulgar slogans such as Zhongshuan's brilliant plan to bring Jinling to a peaceful state, but after embarrassing himself, he went to shit. Zhongshuan's son, please go to shit, and Li, your father wants you to go home and shit, were all over the city. It was foreseeable that this would be the talk of the town the next morning. Apart from that, there was not much chaos. Jia Su waved his hand and asked the messenger to leave. He looked at Jia Sherdao and said in a trembling voice, "Was the gold medal filled with shit and urine?" Jia Sherdao looked embarrassed. "My brother said that it was canned herring food." Jia Su's lips trembled, and he did not know what to say. Although he did not know what had happened, it was obvious that King Zhongshan had suffered a great loss. As for the specific situation, he could roughly deduce from the loud slogans in the city. This was too undignified. For a moment, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. But when he thought of Sun Lang's real identity and his plan tonight, especially the unconscious Dowager Duchess, Jia Su felt irritated. He snorted. "I heard from my subordinate that you came to see me before. What happened?" Jia Sherdao's expression changed slightly. His father had accumulated great power, so he didn't dare to lie. After all, old Madam was also angered to the point of vomiting blood after hearing the truth. If his father also did the same thing, he, as a son, would suffer. Therefore, he answered honestly, "Father, don't be anxious and don't get angry. Some time ago, around dusk, Madam Xing of Roma Manor was assassinated in her room." Jia Su suddenly stood up and acted very realistically. "What? Assassinated?" Jia Sherdao nodded dejectedly. Jia Su shouted, "Bastard! In terms of seniority, she's your aunt. It's my sister-in-law. How dare you hide it from me when something happened to her? Jia Sherdao groaned in his heart as he carefully explained, my father was injured and was resting in bed. I saw that he was sleeping soundly, so I didn't wake him up. Anyway, it's already like this, and my brother is watching over me, so it doesn't matter if I tell you later. After all, there's no turning back. Jiasu snorted coldly, and his expression turned stern. And then, Jia Sherdao played dumb. What then? Duke Ning stepped forward and glared at him fiercely. Madame Xing's courtyard is in the backyard, surrounded by courtyards. If she died in her own courtyard, the maids around her would definitely scream. The backyard of Rongwa Manor is well connected, so the news would spread very quickly. Unlike Wang Zixing's death last time, this can't be hidden. Look at how panicked you are. Does old madam know about it? Jia Sherdao took a step back guiltily. After all, his father had seen through everything. He nodded slowly. Yes. Jiasu took a deep breath. Finish. Jia Sherdao lowered his head and said quickly, before Tanshan blocked the news, old madam had already heard about it and came. She was sad, but when she found out that Sister Phone wasn't here, she couldn't hide anything from her. After she knew about it, she was so angry that she vomited blood and fainted. As soon as he finished, he felt something tighten in front of his chest. His father had already grabbed his clothes and lifted him up. Jia Sherdao met his father's eyes and found that his father's face was ferocious and murderous, like a ferocious tiger. He heard his father yell in a low voice, "Why didn't you wake me up when such a big thing happened? How is old madam? Have you called a doctor?" Jia Sherdao said in a low voice, "Yes, but it's useless. Father, you know about old madam's condition. She just took some pills to restore her origin and used her inner strength to nourish her meridians." Jia Su squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. "What about your brother, Jiang?" Jia Sherdao was stunned. "Brother?" Duke Ning gritted his teeth. "Does your brother know about this? Does he know that his grandmother vomited blood? Does he know how she feels now? What's he doing now? How can he still be in a mood to do such a big thing? That's his biological grandmother, the person who loves him the most in the world. What is he doing now?" Jiasu's series of questions contained great anger. 70% of these words came from his heart, and 30% was acting. He had mixed feelings about this imposter who pretended to be his nephew and messed around in Rongwa Mansion. Jia Sherdao said blankly, "I don't know." Looking at his son's confused face, Jiasu was infuriated. "Idiot! What kind of bewitching potion did he feed you? You don't even ask and are willing to die for him. Then find him for me." Throwing Jia Sherdao out, Duke Ning yelled, "Madame Xing was attacked, old madam is in a coma, and even my uncle was attacked twice. Is this how he does things?" Jia Sherdao staggered to the ground and shook his head. "I don't know where my brother is." Jiasu yelled, "Then find him for me." Father. The expected subservience did not happen. If his father ordered him to do something in anger, according to past experience, this timid son would choose to do it no matter how difficult it was. But not this time. Jia Sherdao stood where he was and slowly looked up at his father. His eyes were calm. "Father, please calm down," he said. This strange and rare sense of calmness even affected Jiasu, making him unable to curse out loud. He stared at Jia Sherdao without saying a word. Jia Sherdao's voice was low. "I know you're angry, Father, and I understand why you're angry, but please don't disturb my brother. He must be doing something important now." "Important? What was the most important thing for an imposter?" Jiasu said sternly. "Madame Xing's matter is the most important. Maybe he's already doing it, or maybe he hasn't. But no matter what, the situation is very serious. As you said, we're facing a very dangerous situation. You've been assassinated twice, and Rongwa Mansion is in trouble. Our enemies are very strong, and my brother's enemies are even stronger." Jia Sherdao said in a low voice, "My brother once said that a strong fortress usually collapses from the inside. With your wisdom, Father, you should know the consequences of internal strife. So, please don't disturb my brother." Jiasu was so angry that he laughed. "Disturb? Are you saying that I'm dragging your elder brother down?" Jia Sherdao wanted to say that his son wouldn't dare, but maybe he got courage from Liang Jingru, or maybe there was some other reason that made him do something very brave. He answered calmly, "Yes." Jia Su was stunned. What? What did this little bastard say? He, he's rebelling. His authority was challenged, and for every father who wanted to control, this was a reason for anger. Jia Su was furious. He clenched his fists and was about to kill this little bastard. "Father, please don't be angry. I'm telling the truth." Jia Sherdao also clenched his fists. He met his father's eyes and gritted his teeth. "My brother has always encouraged me to be honest with you instead of being a yes man. I'm not as confident as my brother, and I don't have his skills and temperament, so I've never been able to do it. But this time, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. This time was different. This time, it was about his brother. That night in Bai Castle, his brother calmly told him the truth. When he came to Jinling for the first time, he silently looked at Rongwa Mansion, the armor and paintings in the ancestral hall, the conspiracy that Granny Wang unintentionally mentioned, the painful past, and the chaotic future. His brother had always been fighting, with Tensei Province, with the imperial court, with the emperor, with the past, and with himself. It was already hard enough. He couldn't add more burden to his brother. He said, "But this time, I'm standing in front of you and telling you what's in my heart. No matter what, please believe in my brother. Believe that he can handle everything." Before he could finish his words, he had already been kicked in the chest, flying all the way out, landing on the ground outside. He rolled and fell to the ground. The strength of the kick just now was not light, causing him to grimace in pain. Jia Su's face was livid. Without saying a word, he walked past him and disappeared into the darkness. Jia Sherdao sat up with a bitter smile. He rubbed his chest and adjusted his breath. Bitterness and confusion appeared on his face. In fact, his father's question was also his question. He didn't understand, and he didn't know either. Madame Xing was assassinated, and Madame Xing was in a coma. Getting Lu Shujin was the most important thing. However, the chaos in the city, the lively slogans, the seraph hadn't taken off yet, and his brother hadn't made any arrangements. He didn't understand, and he didn't know what his brother was going to do. Moreover, his father's attitude made him feel a trace of strangeness that he didn't dare to think about. "Brother, what's your plan?" Chapter 825. It was windy at night. It was stormy in Jinling. But all of this had nothing to do with the Rongwa Mansion. This was the safest place in Jinling, and all of the wind and rain were blocked outside the door. Jia Su knocked on the door of the Rongwa Mansion alone. Everyone in the residence knew the first old master next door. Even though the gatekeepers were instructed to be on guard, old master Jia Su was naturally not one of them. Duke Ning refused the doorman's offer to lead the way. He walked slowly in the manor. The cold wind blew on his face, but his mood was unspeakably agitated. It was the first time he felt so helpless since he had achieved great success in his studies. It was said that even an upright official would find it difficult to resolve a family dispute. Even a wise man would have to retreat in front of a person's heart. Since ancient times, people's hearts were the most difficult to predict. He sighed and walked to the back of the mansion. He passed through the arch and came to the old madam's courtyard. The lights were on inside, and there were people guarding outside. They looked like they were facing a great enemy. Because the old madam vomited blood and fainted, this respectable old woman who had supported the Rongwa Mansion for more than a decade had encountered the most difficult hurdle to cross, perhaps the last hurdle. Jia Su sighed imperceptibly. After he explained his purpose, Xue Baochai and Lin Daiyu came out to greet him. Jia Su sighed. "How is the old madam?" Xue Baochai nodded. "She's better, but she's still unconscious." Jia Su nodded silently. He saw Xue Baochai's eyes. He found that this smart woman from the Xue family was looking at him. Her bright eyes shone strangely under the dim light, as if she could see through the confusion and secrets in his heart. He was shocked by his own thoughts. How could it be? He shook his head self-mockingly and said, "I'll go in and take a look." Shue Baochai frowned imperceptibly and thought quickly in her mind. She did not trust Jia Su now. This was natural because her husband had told her that Jia Su had been instigated by the hostile forces of the Prince Zhongshuan mansion. At that time, she wanted to explain to Jia Su, but her husband solemnly stopped her. Her husband said that this was a bet. Although she did not know what the bet was, she could see the seriousness in her husband's eyes. Since her husband didn't want her to go, then she wouldn't go. But under such circumstances, Jia Su could not be trusted. Letting him come into contact with the Dowager Duchess was risky. This was what troubled Shue Baochai. However, in a moment, Shue Baochai had already thought about it a few times. Finally, she nodded and said, "Of course. Uncle, please be careful and don't disturb the old madam." Of course. Jia Su glanced around. There was no one else but his two niece-in-law in front of him. He asked in a low voice, as if nothing had happened, "About Dowager Duchess. Does Jia Ying have any plans?" Shue Baochai's heart skipped a beat. She said calmly, "My husband only asked us to protect grandmother. He will take care of everything else. Since my husband is so confident, we don't have to be too anxious." Jia Su said indifferently. In other words, his grandmother was shocked by the bad news these few days. First, her favorite granddaughter-in-law was suspected of killing her brother and escaping. Then, the head of the Wang family died in the Rongwa mansion. Then, even her daughter-in-law died. She vomited blood and fainted in anger. The entire Rongwa mansion is in a mess. Jiang saw it all. He watched the group of women cry and wail helplessly and refused to appear to take charge of the situation. Lin Daiyu said, "Brother is the head of the family. Now that he is back, the Rongwa mansion does not need to worry about the family matters of the Rongwa mansion." Jia Su did not expect Lin Daiyu to be so direct and talk back to an elder. She was simply lawless. He was so angry that he laughed. "What? As an elder, I can't even say anything?" Lin Daiyu wanted to retort, but was stopped by Shue Baochai. She stopped her sister with a look and smiled apologetically at Jia Su. Grandmother fainted. Pinner was the most anxious, so her words were a bit harsh. Jia Su snorted and ignored the two. He flicked his sleeves and entered the room. Shue Baochai watched Jia Su enter and complained, "Pinner, why did you talk back to eldest uncle?" Lin Daiyu said indifferently, "He seems to have bad intentions." Shue Baochai sighed. Of course, she could hear the provocation in the words just now. Then what was the bet? When he entered the room, the old madam's maid, Yuan Yang, was sitting by the bed. Seeing Master Jia Su enter, she hurriedly stood up to welcome him. Jia Su waved his hand and said in a low voice, "You can leave first." Yuan Yang hesitated when she heard this. Jia Su suddenly became irritated. He sneered. "What? You don't even trust me? You think I'm here to harm the old madam? Then you can stay here and watch. Just watch." Although Yuan Yang was the old madam's favored maid and had some prestige in the Fu, it was not enough in front of the old master of the Ningguo Fu. Seeing Jia Su get angry, she could only endure her grievances and leave dejectedly. Servants could not argue with the old master. Talk back. After Jia Su chased Yuan Yang away, he came to the old madam's bed and slowly sat by the bed. He grabbed the old lady's hand, feeling the flow of true qi in her body and the beating of her heart. She was the only remaining elder of the previous generation of the Jia family. She had once supported the broken lintel of the Rongwa mansion by herself. Now, she was lying on the bed with her eyes closed, her hair white. The valiant and awe-inspiring auntie in his memory would never return. Jia Su's nose turned sour. He could feel the scars and weakness under this old body. The first half of her life was happy, and the second half was strong and alone. She had many children and grandchildren, but the war took everything away from her. Her husband, son, and grandson. No one knew the pain in her heart. She had to shoulder the loss of her men all by herself. Her favorite grandson had run away from home, and there was no news of him at all. For a time, he was famous all over the world, and he was the champion of the 6 armies. However, he was defeated in the last battle. 2 years later, he reappeared. This should have been enough to make her feel comforted and happy. But fate was so cruel that it revealed the truth that she could not bear to speak out. The real Jia Ying had died 8 years ago. The Jia Ying who had returned was actually an imposter. He had suffered a heavy fate that ordinary people could not imagine. His heart was filled with twisted hatred and killing intent. He had dragged the Jia family into the storm and brought about a cruel and unpredictable fate. He had caused the empire to lose the ability to create an imperial army. This crime, this sin, it was impossible to determine. Since the founding of the empire, even the worst rebellion could not be compared to what he had done. Jia Su smiled bitterly. There was bitterness, pity, and unwillingness in his smile. You've suffered for your whole life. What supported you through these years was your love and memories for your grandson. However, these were all fake. Even the hero who made great achievements and brought glory to your ancestors was fake. He wasn't your grandson at all. The 6 years of concern and 2 years of pain were all fake. Speaking of this, Jia Su's eyes were filled with tears. He could not bear to imagine this old woman's final destination and fate. After knowing the truth, would she be in so much pain that she wished she was dead? Even if she was kept in the dark and was immersed in the joy of seeing her grandson again. Her grandson had become a great rebel and was in an endless battle with the imperial power. How could she be at ease? Therefore, Jia Su felt sad and regretful. Whether what the old woman saw in the end was real or fake, it was the same cruel fate, especially for such a respectable old woman. The impermanence of fate was enough to make even the wisest person sigh helplessly. Jia Su said in a low voice, "If it was you, what would you want to see?" No one answered his question. Old matriarch closed her eyes and laid on the bed, breathing calmly. Outside the window, the night wind was like a curtain. On the other side of the house, Sun Langping was lying on the roof tiles with his head resting on his arms. He looked at the dark night and the boundless starry sky in silence. He slowly raised his hand and reached toward the sky, toward the endless void, but he could not grab anything. Earth, his hometown, everything was long gone, so far that he could not go home because he did not know where his hometown was. He did not know if Earth was light years away or in another universe. It had been more than 8 years. Everything he had experienced, everything he had learned, and everything he had lost. Looking back, there were many things that he could not imagine when he was on Earth. There was no sword saint on Earth, no monster that could kill everyone, no martial arts, no sky demon. It has been more than 8 years since he transmigrated. I have been in this world for more than 8 years. I can't go back. What do you want to see? Sun Lang slowly clenched his fists and smiled. This is a gamble. He said in his heart, this is the chance I gave you and also the chance you gave me. This is my own choice. No one forced me to accept it. No one forced me to leave. No one handed me a sword the moment I woke up and asked me to become another person, to replace him on the battlefield, to kill, to be killed, to be the sword saint, general, and hero. Also, after I had adapted to my role, given up on my illusions, and wanted to happily be a sword saint, a general, a hero, and another person, no one took away all of this with a ruthless backstab, telling me that I was unworthy, that I was an extraterrestrial demon, that I was an alien. Fate is in my own hands, and everything can start anew. The people who care about me, the people I care about. Sometimes, it is very simple to satisfy a person. Sometimes I don't want much. This place once gave me false warmth. Even if it was false, it was still very warm. So, it is just a gamble. If you can do it, I can do it. For you, for all of you. I will let you see everything you want to see. Chapter 826. Jinling was lively for half the night. Around dawn, the hooligans who had been running around the streets, playing and shouting, finally returned home in 2s and 3s. Looking at their appearance, it seemed that they still hadn't had enough. It seemed that tonight's large-scale organized carnival had given them a sense of pleasure similar to that of a biker gang, even though they didn't know who that damn Zhongshuan cub was. even though they didn't know why their boss had told them to do such a boring thing. But who cares? It was quite fun. They had played to their heart's content tonight, but now they were retreating 2 hours early. There was no other reason, but because they gradually felt the dampness in the air. Jinling was a place in Jiangnan, a so-called water town. It had always been rainy, and the sky was like the face of a child, changing at will. One moment it was sunny and warm, and the next moment it was raining like a curtain. People who had been in Jiangnan for a long time had accumulated some life experience, such as tonight. Although the sky was like a curtain, dawn had not yet arrived, and the surroundings were pitch black. The stars in the sky were hidden, and the air was slightly damp. People with experience had already read the weather forecast. It's going to rain, so the hooligans began to disperse. After about an hour, the morning sun cast a ray of light, and the chaos in the Jinling government office finally came to an end. The Yamen runners who were on guard at night all breathed a sigh of relief. The battlefield last night had also been cleaned up. The corpses were cleaned up, the captives were detained, and the traces of the explosion were completely covered. Jia Yutuan, carrying his family heirloom, the golden-back mountain splitting axe, walked out of the Yamen gate. He stood on the steps and looked up at the slightly bright sky. Today's dawn was darker than the previous few days because the sky was gloomy and dark. It's going to rain, the prefectural magistrate sighed. Perhaps it was because of yesterday's chaos, but his mood was as gloomy as the dark clouds in the sky. He had a feeling that something big was going to happen soon. Suddenly, he heard a muffled sound. Old Lu, who lived in the neighboring district, was also peddling buns that had just come out of the pot. He passed by the Yamen every day, but today's scenery was different from usual. This was because he saw the first master of the prefectural magistrate at the entrance of the Yamen. The old man's face was gloomy, and he was carrying a golden mountain-splitting axe. He was standing in front of the drum and looking up at the sky, exuding a sense of dread that said, "You are welcome to petition." Old Lu was dumbfounded. His mouth was wide open, and the load on his shoulder fell to the ground with a dull thud. The magistrate left in a sorry state. Old Lu stared blankly for a moment before coming to his senses. First, he checked to see if the steam buns were broken. Then, he immediately picked up his load and left in a hurry. Even though his appearance was too scary, it had nothing to do with ordinary people. He still had to sell steam buns today, so he had to sell them all before the rain started. Yes, Old Lu, who had lived in Jinling for decades, had a wealth of experience. For his point of view, today's weather was a bit strange. Although the dark clouds were very thick and came very quickly, from his experience, this rain wouldn't come down for a while. It's going to rain. In his new hiding place, the young prince, who had experienced indescribable pain last night, looked up at the gloomy sky. The weather is not good. I don't know if it will delay things. The old servant knew what his master was talking about. He replied, "A rainy day will hinder the army's progress, but our dynasty is well equipped and the roads are well maintained. In addition, the reinforcements are all elites, so there shouldn't be too much of a problem." King Zhongshu nodded. He turned his head to ask Su Qin for his opinion, but he saw that his teacher was staring blankly at the sky, seemingly lost in thought. He asked, "Teacher?" Su Qin retracted his gaze. The complicated look in his eyes only lasted for a short moment. "This Su is here." "Teacher, what were you looking at just now?" "Nothing," Su Qin replied calmly. "I just feel that this bad weather really came at a bad time. This prince thinks so too. It looks like it's going to rain heavily today. The dark clouds have gathered here, so it's definitely going to be a continuous downpour for several days." King Zhongshuan said faintly. "But killing people on a rainy night is quite romantic. The rain can wash away too many things." Su Qin seemed to have something on his mind. He only smiled faintly. "Yes." King Zhongshuan frowned slightly. He had also noticed Su Qin's neglect, but he didn't need to show his dissatisfaction. At least now wasn't the time. He still had to rely on this person. But in the future, he quietly retracted the cold, killing intent in his heart. After experiencing such a humiliating event last night, he was in a sorry state and had lost all of his elegance. At least a dozen people had seen him in his worst state. The culprit, Jia Ying, naturally had to be torn to pieces, but these people who had seen things they shouldn't have seen, he had to find a way to make them shut up. Su Qin and Old Man Fu still had some skills, so he couldn't act rashly for the time being. But the others, no matter what, they were the future crown prince and even the emperor. He couldn't leave behind such a dirty stain. Putting aside the future for now, he took a deep breath and said to Su Qin, "According to our plan, the reinforcements will all be here by tonight at the latest. We've already transferred the Jinling general away, and the gate commander only needs an imperial edict. Sir, is it tonight?" Su Qin subconsciously looked up at the sky and hesitated for a moment. He was different from the young prince. Although he already had a plan in mind, when it came to it, he still felt a little uneasy. It was only when dissatisfaction slowly rose in King Zhongshuan's eyes that Su Qin reacted. He immediately said, "We'll do as you wish. But before that, we have to add one last flame to the Rongwa estate." The young prince was satisfied. He bowed and said, "Then I'll leave everything to Sir." In the morning, the weather was getting gloomier, but it still wasn't raining. This kind of weather was somewhat annoying, and it was more likely to arouse people's irritation. Everything was proceeding in an orderly and calm manner. The Shi family was very calm, the Wang family was very calm, and the Jinling estate was very calm. It was as if today was just an ordinary rainy day, and nothing would happen. The Rongwa estate was also very calm, but there was a gloomy melancholy in the calmness. This weather was like a portrayal of everyone's mood. Jia Tanshun had already secretly cried several times, let alone the other maids and servants. For the past few years, the old ancestor had always been the sky of the Rongwa mansion. But today, they felt the most direct sense of despair. They were at a loss, and their hearts were in turmoil, because the sky of the Rongwa mansion was about to collapse. Under the surface of calm, someone was carefully and viciously manipulating all of this. After dawn, Jia Su went to visit Matriarch Shi again. The matriarch woke up briefly in the morning, and after vomiting a few mouthfuls of blood, she fell into a coma again. The Rongwa estate was in chaos again. Duke Ning was furious. After circulating energy for the matriarch, he felt her increasingly weak pulse. Jia Su's anger could no longer be contained. He almost didn't hide it as he ordered Xue Baochai to leave with him. Xue Baochai naturally wouldn't leave the matriarch. Jia Su took a step back and asked Jin Yuanyang, who was guarding the room, to leave. Jin Yuanyang was shot again. She walked out aggrievedly, and the atmosphere in the room became tense. Jia Su pointed at the unconscious matriarch on the bed. "His grandmother is already like this. Where is he now? Can he bear to look at her like this?" Xue Baochai calmly said, "Uncle, lower your voice. Also, we don't know. Maybe my husband has already rushed to Mingzhou. Maybe he has other plans." Her calmness made Jia Su even angrier. These two little girls' mysterious confidence in Sun Lang made him even angrier. "You're husband and wife. This is related to the safety of the old lady. Don't you even ask? I think you were like that little bastard, being bewitched by Jiang." The more he spoke, the angrier he became. He pointed at the matriarch and shouted, "What if this time, because of his mistakes and inaction, the matriarch can't hold on? What will you say? Of course the murderer will pay with his life." Xue Baochai coldly said, "Uncle, do you think that my husband is the one who caused the death of my grandmother? Wasn't that the case?" Jia Su's eyes revealed such a meaning. Lin Daiyu calmly said, "I think you are the one who has been bewitched." Jia Su's heart trembled. He looked at the two women in front of him, and his expression changed drastically. He suddenly laughed and closed his eyes. "I wanted to see him last night, but he didn't want to see me. I don't know where he is, and I don't know why he won't come out. But if he doesn't want to see me, I know how to force him to show himself." He stood up, raised his palms, and slashed at Lin Daiyu and Xue Baochai. Lin Daiyu and Xue Baochai came from the military and were already on guard against Jia Su. They were not surprised to see him attack. They both took a step back and held their weapons. Their eyes turned cold. Perhaps in the next moment, they would not hesitate to retaliate. But Jia Su's body stopped. It was as if an invisible force had controlled his body. This caused him to freeze on the spot. Only Jia Su himself knew what had happened. Moments later, Jia Su's face turned pale, and he staggered 2 steps back before regaining his footing. He looked at the 2 people in front of him with a complicated expression and suddenly laughed. You see, he's right here. He didn't go anywhere. He watched his grandmother vomit blood and watch her suffer on the bed, but he didn't move at all. Did he enter this room? Did he ever look at his grandmother? Not even once? Jia Su laughed coldly, and his laughter was filled with mockery and disappointment. Then, he strode out of the room. Lin Daiyu whispered, "Should we follow him?" Shui Baochai shook her head. "No, my husband has something to say to him." Sister Bao also sighed. She looked at the old madam lying on the bed, and then held Sister Lin's hand. They looked at each other and recalled Jia Su's words. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.